Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation and Appropriations now called to order. Today is Friday, July 14, and I'm going to make sure it's 9:02. In compliance with the Open Government Law, the notice for this public hearing were posted on the Gov Guam Public Notice Portal, KGTF PBS Channel 12, and disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Monday, July 3rd, and on Friday, July 7th. The agenda this morning will be Bill 26-37 COR, the Committee on Rules by request of the I Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Governor of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions relative to the office of the Attorney General's office. Okay. At this time, I ask the members of the Attorney General's office and the panel to please rise and be placed under oath by the Sergeant Arm. And anyone else behind the panel, please.
Electronically and in writing be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. The general rules for this budget hearing. Please provide my legislative staff with any document for photocopying and distribution. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted from participating and will be escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this morning. We have the Oversight Chair of the Attorney General's Office, Speaker Therese Serlai. We have Senator Jesse Lujan and Senator Chris Duenas. At this point, I'd ask the Attorney General if he wants to introduce everybody, and then we'll start his presentation of his budget. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to introduce my team here today, and I'll go from my left to my right. We start off with Deputy of Admin Frank Gumatau, the Chief Deputy Joseph Guthrie, Assistant Chief Prosecutor Grant Olan, the Civil Deputy Graham Botha, Child Support Deputy and 4D Director Raymond Alagan, and Assistant Deputy Family Unit Renita Munoz. I also have our Human Resources Director here behind me, which is Mr. Mark Pito. Excuse me, and to my immediate left is Tom Paulino, who is our accounting supervisor, our general accounting supervisor. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, Madam Speaker, Senators Lujan and Senator Duenas, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to begin the discussions on our upcoming fiscal year budget. Having been the Attorney General 16 years ago, I'm aware of the logistics and the requirements of the office. Our office is larger than it was 16 years ago. The budget is greater, but the duties remain either equal to, if not more, than when I last served the people. We wish to point out that, and excuse me if I'm speaking to the choir, so to speak, I know that you are well aware of these things, so I do not intend to preach to the committee, but of all the departments in our government of Guam, the Attorney General is the only one that makes money and saves money for our entire government. We hold a unique role in that we are what you might equate to be the glue that keeps all three branches together. As the legislature has appropriations authority and oversight authority in order to pass legislation. Without the Attorney General, the enforcement ability of laws that you pass cannot be done. It requires an Attorney General, it requires a person in our system of government in order to take and interpret and provide advice to all members of our government, and, if necessary, go before the judiciary, which is arguably one of the three, but arguably one of the most logistically important branches of our government, because the judiciary will interpret the laws passed by the legislature. But without the Attorney General, that statute, that law, oftentimes will not make it over to the judiciary for interpretation and enforcement. The three purposes of the Attorney General are to protect the public interest, both in the civil and the criminal areas, to create a uniform legal policy throughout our entire single government of Guam, so we don't have castles that individual directors or officials are trying to create their own mini-government, and to save money for our taxpayers, and especially important for the legislature, because I know that every year it's important that the legislature appropriate that money. Unlike other departments, we are a department that is made primarily of legal professionals. We are made up of attorneys that are tasked and licensed in order to administer the law. We are the ones that take it before the judiciary. We are the ones that advise the government officials what you pass in terms of the statutes and the mandates of our government. We also protect the general public's civil rights. We protect people at night when you sleep against the bad guys that we put in jail. We work with other law enforcement officials to make sure that our criminal laws are being enforced, both the violent and non-violent type criminals. I would also suggest that our most recent mandate from the people was to make them safe, to enforce our criminal laws, to make sure that the laws that you have passed are not meaningless. And I guess one of the laws that has come up in the past 6 months, like the panhandling law, although some might consider that it is a nonviolent, it's somewhat of a controversial type statute, but it is a statute that was passed by the legislature. And from all accounts, it had not been effectively enforced for many years. It was part of this new Attorney General's office requirement that any law that you pass as our elected leaders must be enforced. It is not our position to interpret laws to the extent that we exclude the legislative right to have the law enforced. If there's a problem with it, and I'll digress with that, it is also the duty, the common law duty of the Attorney General to interpret the law and then ask the legislature to reconsider its position, and if necessary, take it before the judiciary if there's a law that might be unconstitutional or too vague to be implemented. That is how we're running the Attorney General's office now. The AG and the legislature have a common purpose. You pass, we enforce, and we are your mouthpiece before the judiciary, but most especially before the juries that are here, are made up of our people, and especially in the criminal area. I would ask, as a preface to our discussions about money, that the legislature consider the current terrain that faces we as legal professionals in our community. Number one, there are insufficient attorneys on Guam. And from an economics point of view, and I'm sure the chairman is very well aware of this, when you have fewer attorneys, the price goes up in anything, the supply-demand type of curve. It has caused us, we at the Attorney General's office, to have to find new ways in order to perform our duties. One of the new ways that we have found has been to shift attorneys within the office, to have civil attorneys be doing some criminal work, to be actively recruiting on island, obviously, retirees, retired attorneys, to ask them to come back to the Attorney General's office, and thank you for that ability with the retirement to allow us to call back some of the retired attorneys. They're invaluable to our ability to perform our work as the legislature has required. I would say, from our perspective, to weaken the Attorney General's office is to handicap our ability in order to enforce the laws. We've had to, in the past few months, pull away from Civil Service Commission cases because we do not have the number of attorneys required in order to do these administrative type proceedings that are very laborious for our office, and the hard decision had to be made. But we still advise and consult with the administrators of the government in order when they go before the Civil Service Commission, which is basically made up of non-attorneys, somewhat of a small, I see it as a small claims court type situation, with the ability of the government or the director, if they disagree with the Civil Service Commission decision, to take it into the courts, and we are continuing to provide that service to go into the courts. I will make no bones about it. Having been the age and the number of years of experience that I have as an attorney, I don't have any time to be playing games in the AG's office, as I'm sure you as well do. I have an ambitious and aggressive agenda that makes no bones about it. We will enforce the law. You've seen how we've come out very strongly. We put some billboards up. That was as a deterrence. It wasn't for some glamour shot or for some promotion of this Attorney General. If you look at those billboards, they are very hard-hitting. They're consistent with California, Colorado, many other jurisdictions in the United States that use the deterrent effect. And it also saves me from having to get more prosecutors so quickly. I believe we are probably about 8 or 9 prosecutors of 21 that we need in that office. We're also tapping into our federal funds in addition to using our local funds, and I've hired PCs with the mandate that they find as much federal money as they can. We're coordinating with the Lieutenant Governor's office to take these federal program grant monies that they have. Stephanie Flores up there, and she actively sends us these federal grant opportunities so that we can defer the local costs that we are incurring. We're trying to find salaried attorneys in our office because they are obviously they're cheaper than getting an hourly attorney. And that is something that we are trying to do, but working within our system. We are actively recruiting off island. The problem is, and especially with Marwar, I think we had 3 attorneys that were showing a strong interest in coming here. But when Marwar hit nationally the news, it was interesting that within 2 weeks, all 3 of them had withdrawn their applications. We have 5 divisions in the office. The General Crimes Division, which deals with our violent and nonviolent criminals, murderers, rapists, thieves, violence, drunks, and so forth. We have our Government Corruption Division that protects us from government officials that are not following your laws, spending your money properly. We have a Civil Division that not only protects our government against ruinous lawsuits that occur in the courts, but enforces the laws in the civil courts. They also provide the invaluable service of preventing matters from having to go to court by giving the entire government of Guam the ability to have legal guidance and representation by our Civil Division attorneys. The Child Support Enforcement Division is critical because to get children the money that they need defers the cost, obviously, from the taxpayers, so they wouldn't have to be applying for welfare and all the other benefits that occur when 2 parents can't raise their children. We also have the Consumer Protection Division, which is important generally and mandated by the legislature that we maintain. Having said that, at this point, Mr. Chairman, Senators, I will have our staff be available for questions on whatever the format is. I know that we've been working with Mr. Chairman's office in terms of the figures and the numbers. And I highlight what I had said earlier, that attorneys are not cheap. We're one of the most expensive expenditures of the government of Guam per person. Obviously, the legislature has set the salary scale for the lawyers. The 22% has further added on to the expenditures required by our office. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
sorry, we have the presentation.
Yeah, I was going to ask for that. But I'd like to also recognize my colleagues that have joined us, Senator Tello, my vice chair, and Senator Tom Fisher. Thank you. And whenever you're ready, Tom, you're the money guy. I was wondering if the Attorney General going to forget you, and you got to give us all the information. Thank you, sir. Please.
Yes, I'm ready for the presentation. Good morning, Senators. My name is Thomas Polino. I am the General Accounting Supervisor for the Office of the Attorney General. And I will be presenting the budget, the 2024 budget. I was asked to keep my slides at 15 or less, and my presentation in less than 15 minutes. So I'm going to try my best to keep within those parameters. Next slide. We are asking for 19.9 million for FY24. 84% of this will go to personnel, salaries, and benefits, 8% for contractual, 7.5% for office space rental, and the remaining is less than 1%. This is an increase of 4.2 million, and the next slide we'll talk about where all the money is coming from, or where the funds will be used. Just to start, in 2023, we were given 15.7 million as our base appropriation, and that was used to fund personnel, contractual, and office rent. We were given continuing appropriations, which amounted to 2.2 million. So in total, we had 18 million to fund our operations. So for the remaining 2 million, we are asking for 698,000 to fully fund the 22% general pay plan for FY24. We're asking 376,000 for 3 additional prosecutors. We're hoping to get our numbers up to 25. That is our target range. We're asking for $232 to be used to fund 3 positions for the Child Enforcement Division. That is specifically a requirement for our IRS compliance. We're asking for 200,000 for new CSET items. Our prosecution case management information system is expected to cost 157. This is an upgrade from what we have. There was a $83,000 increase in rent for 2024, but I do want to point out that while it is an increase, we are saving almost $1 million in rent by moving. Our current lease had increased tremendously, so the new location would actually save us almost $1 million. We have 74,000 in increments for 2024. We're asking for 54,000 in supplies, 50,000 for moving expenses, and an extra 10,000 for travel. Next slide, please. In our meetings with OFB, we were asked to answer 9 questions, so I will present those answers. The first question was if we had any prior outstanding personnel service obligations. We have 2 outstanding prior, 10,000 for military leave without pay. My staff had gone through each pay period to make sure everything was paid, and we did find a couple of cases that was not paid, so this is from 2019 and 2022, and we'll be sending in that request to the Speaker shortly. And there are $3,000 worth of increments in 2021 and 2022 for 2 employees. So those have been submitted, and we're processing those. So they should be paid by the end of this fiscal year. The second question was the status of paying our merit bonus. To date, we have not paid our merit bonuses, but we have asked the HR division to go through all the personnel files and audit to make sure we have that complete list, so when we are ready, we could implement it. The total cost of that is $746,000. There were 351 outstanding performance evaluations given to 120 employees. And the range is from 2000 to 2023. There were a couple that didn't meet the last merit. The third question was, how much is the 22% general pay plan? For 2024, our cost is almost $700,000. And for 2023, we expect it to be $350,000. And that's for April to September. Next slide, please. Oh. The fourth question was, have we Have we procured the majority of our budgeted supplies and equipment? Yes, we have. The fifth question was related to capital outlay projects that are pending 2023. We have 7 big ticket items that qualify under this category, and they amount to $148,000. 2 are funded from our general fund. That is our high-speed scanners. We're currently trying to digitize most of our files so that we can have it readily available, and some ups for our servers. They were slightly damaged during the typhoon, so we need to replace those. We have $94,000 in CSED projects. We're trying to get a phone server, a sedan, and a cargo van to replace our aging fleet and for our outreach events that are coming up. The last 2 items are for our federally funded Project Gumafega. That's for our firewall and our video recorder. So that's the 7 items that are pending. We expect them to be fully procured by the end of this fiscal year. This next slide, please. The 6th question was how many authorized vacant positions have been filled and the hiring dates. We have hired 34 positions from January 3rd to present. The 7th question is how much federal funding the department has received, expended, and obligated to date. We have 4 main categories. 2 are Victim of Crime Act grants, our child support, and some discretionary grants. The total that was, maybe I'm using the wrong word, this isn't awarded just in 23, this is all the federal funds that are available in 2023, I think would be a better way to put it. But we have 11.9 million in federal funds. To date, we've spent or obligated 7 million, and that gives us about 4 million for the rest of the fiscal year. I do want to mention, though, that most of our grants are multi-year grants, and we expect to fully expend all of them before the grant period ends. Next slide, please. So the last 2 questions. We have not received ARP money, and our accounts are not subject to BBMR allotment reserve. Next slide. Within our budget, we're asking for several provisions to be considered by this body. The first one is the sole source provision. In our previous years, we've always been allowed 5% of our budget to be allocated for these items. We're asking if we can increase it to 15%, and that would just give us the flexibility that we need for our operations. We're asking for pay adjustments. This would be in line with what was given to PD and APD. The total cost is $612 for 2024. Next slide, please. In the previous years, we were allowed to hire retired attorneys. Sorry, it's really small. But this is modeled after those provisions, and what this provision would do is it will allow us to hire retired staff. We have some staff that have retired and would like to come back and help us to expand our operations and mainly to train those that are our new employees to figure out how they've done a lot of their awesome work. The biggest impediment is that most of them do not want to give up their retirement. So this provision, modeled after the other ones, just allows us that flexibility to hire a retired employee. Next slide. The Honorable Elizabeth Anderson, the chairman of the CICC, the Criminal Injuries Compensation Commission, has asked that we include in our budget a specific portion for the CICC. She is asking for $66,000 to be provided. That would fund a program coordinator 3 or lower at $55,000 and that includes salaries and benefits, $2,000 for travel, $1,500 for supplies, and $5,000 for contractual obligations. Next slide, please. We are asking to include within the restrictions on hiring unclass to include this one provision. And this will allow the AG to hire unclass positions. We recognize that the AG's office, or the AG is an elected position, and this would give the similar ability that the mayors have, the governor's office has, and the senators have. And it's just to recognize that the AG is an elected position. Next slide, please. This provision, we are asking for greater authority to be able to allow attorneys within the office to have outside employment subject to the approval of the AG. What this would do is that it will allow an attorney to be able to close out their cases before they start at the AG's office, or they're able to close out their cases without having, how would you say?
To clarify, since Tom isn't a lawyer, we're having difficulty getting lawyers. This is that new and novel way in order to do more with less. The ability to allow attorneys to engage in not just close out some of the cases, but to actually engage, as they did before, on limited basis on certain cases. I would like to refresh people's memories. 30 years ago, there was a ProTech Awards program. Many of those people were the kids of our Manamco now. When the attorneys come into the AG's office, they're hamstrung, their hands are tied on their inability to help out their parents on cases that would normally be helpful to them, and is the reason why they got trained in law school was the parents. There's many of our local attorneys that are having that type of situation and problem. We're just asking to restore the law the way that the legislature allowed it, and it's consistent with the federal government, that on a case-by-case basis, the hiring authority, the supervisor, has that ability to allow an attorney to engage in the outside practice of law. The personnel rules and regs already allow non-attorneys to engage in outside employment, depending upon the hiring authority's discretion. That is where Tom is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, General. You explained that way better than I could. Next slide. This is the last provision that we're asking for. We're asking for about $350,000 to fully implement the 22% general pay plan increases for FY23. This is modeled after Public Law 37-3, if I said that correctly. The only difference is that we have added a notwithstanding provision to allow it to be retroactive to April 1st. Next slide. So thank you. I kept it under 15, and I'm hoping under 15 minutes as well.
We would have allowed you more time if you needed. That wouldn't have been a problem. Is that pretty much wrap it up?
Yes.
Okay. I have a few questions, just a few. I think you answered the increase in rent, so I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to try to go through it real quick. I'm just surprised with the merit bonus 2023, 2000 to 2023 was never paid? Even with allowance of the budget, giving them authorization?
There were some that missed the last payment, but to the best of my knowledge, the OAG has not paid the merit bonuses since the last round.
Okay.
So, and some did miss it. We did go through and I did verify the really old ones. So I believe our numbers are.
And I'm trying to understand on that same slide, you identified $9,000 for military leave without pay. Military leave without pay means you don't pay them, right? So why would you quote it as military leave without pay? I mean, how did you come up with $9,000 for something you're not supposed to pay anyway?
There is a law on the books and rules that say that if someone is on military leave without pay, that we are still required to pay their benefits. This includes retirement, health insurance, DDI, all the other ones.
Make sure now you put it like that, because when I look at it, military leave without pay, I mean, I would ask the Attorney General, really? you're gonna pay somebody, you said you didn't wanna pay them. But I understand, there are requirements, you still have to pay those retirements, okay, so not a problem. Trying to keep it as simple as possible, my question, because once I give it to the oversight, she'd be ready to go. Temporary employment, I think isn't there a bill that effectuates this, the hiring of retirees? I think that was a bill I introduced. Isn't there a bill that allow you to hire? It's in the current budget. Okay, we'll put it in to allow you to hire.
Thank you.
That's the easy one. And then, yes, then keep the retirement benefits, so it's worth it for them to come back. Okay, I have no problem with that one.
Thank you.
Okay, because you know we're going to give you a lump sum, so you determine where you put your money. So in the other areas, the Criminal Injuries Compensation Commission, when we give you a lump sum, if you feel you need to move the money anywhere, you decide that. I don't want to put it in the budget that, no, you will put this money here, and then you'll be like,
Thank you.
I had the flexibility, you took it away. We give you the flexibility, all right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, hiring of unclassified employees, I know one of my colleagues will bring that up. But I know you have an answer, so I'm not gonna worry about it. The next one, right before the end, I have a problem with, no problem with the Attorney General permitting outside employment in addition to their employment. But I got a problem with the deputy authorized Attorney General that was elected to have outside. That's the problem I would have. I wouldn't support that one. I mean, I want to ask the deputy, can you authorize the Attorney General to go outside and work? No, I wouldn't support that because he was elected. Okay, so for him to grant anybody, I have no problem. That'll be your authority. But for your deputy to authorize you to hire, to work outside, I have a problem with that when you're elected by the people of Guam.
Senator, I will say that I took this job for public service. I will also say I have Manamco parents, and by my serving the people of Guam, you've hamstrung my ability to help my Manamco parents. I take issue with that. Just because I've taken a pay cut being in this public service position, a tremendous amount of money that I was earning in the private practice, this was allowed before. I'm being singled out just because I'm trying to serve this community. The ability to do outside employment, you obviously are already conflicted out when you're dealing with a family member or anything else as the Attorney General. We have the rules set up for it. But to not allow me as the Attorney General to protect my family, I think it runs contrary to the Chamorro spirit, to this idea of the Professional Technical Award Program, which I was given by the opportunity by the people of Guam. And my parents as well paid for my education as an attorney. But to prevent me and tie my hands on cases I can't even participate in, that I can't help them, I will fight anyone in this government and in the public, in the media, to stand up for my family. If they need an attorney, and I'm the only attorney they have, I will try to defend them. That is why the law was allowing this before. So to allow all my other attorneys to have that ability to protect their families, to protect their friends, to, on a case-by-case basis, participate, and not to let the Attorney General, who's probably getting less than half the people on this table here, I have more experience, and I'm getting less than everybody on this table. So I will engage any senator in a debate of why you would single out the Attorney General from being able to protect and to engage in a certain number of practice cases that I cannot participate as the Attorney General in. You know, why would you want to do that to somebody? Senators in our legislature are allowed to engage in private practice. The Governor of Guam, if she or he was an attorney, can engage in private practice and use that license to protect their Manamco parents or do whatever they wish to do. They can spend their time at the senatorial office, and then they can go appear before the Superior Court and represent a criminal defendant, a private defendant. But you're singling out a person that you should encourage to take a position like this. These are low-paying positions, and especially now with our market the way it is, you know, the attorneys for hourly rate has probably gone up $200 an hour because there's not enough attorneys on Guam. So I respectfully submit that, Mr. Chairman, and I ask that we have further discussions on this. Consistent again with the way the law was before. The Attorney General had the right to engage in private practice on a case-by-case basis. So I'll leave it like that, Senator.
Thank you, sir. I had to say that so that I can hear your reasons for that.
Thank you.
And I thank you, and I will engage with my colleagues on how we can work it.
Thank you, Senator.
Because I
Mr.
don't,
Chairman.
and I agree with you. Just about every one of us that are elected, other than I think the mayors, we're being paid a lot less. You're getting paid a lot less, and I agree with you on that one, okay? So I'll just hold back and I'll wait for my colleagues to back it, and then we move on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Frank, you have something you want to say, Frank?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Sure.
So if I might add to that, I understand the concerns that you've raised, but maybe there's a bit of misunderstanding. I don't think that we're looking to have the lawyers compensated, that it would just be pro bono work that they'd be allowed to do. So they wouldn't be allowed to charge for it. So it's not a matter of going out in there and trying to make extra money, and diverting their attention to something else. It's allowing them to go out and do things for their families as well as the community, for the public good, pro bono, publico. So that's really what the thrust of this is.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd ask, yes, I'd like to also recognize, you want to make another statement,
Well,
sir?
I would ask, and this is consistent with Deputy Gumatauto's statement, restoring the statute to the way it was, because it was silent on that basis. I just don't know what the circumstances could be. That clearly is, most cases are in that. But if I have an attorney that's saying that I will only work for you as an Attorney General for, if I'm able to continue this case and it had some sort of a monetary issue with it, like before, it would be up to the Attorney General to allow or disallow it. But yes, thank you.
All right. Well, we'll have a conversation on that, and we'll figure out how we can fix that. I'd like to also recognize my other colleagues that have joined us. We have Senator Brown, we have Senator Dwayne Snickers, and Senator Roy Kanata. And with that note, I'd ask the Oversight Chair of the Attorney General's Office to ask you questions or give comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Attorney General, for your presentation, and to all of your team here today for supporting that presentation. I'll just start off with the numbers that you've shown us on the PowerPoint. $4.2 million increase is going to cover the pay raises, the 22%, but it doesn't cover the 6%? Why not?
No, it doesn't.
That's
include the
required by
6%.
law.
No, I'm sorry. The 6% for attorneys, yes, it is.
No, 6% for, on one of the last pages of your presentation, you are asking for an additional amount to cover the 6%,
The 6% is only allowed for attorneys.
non-attorneys.
No, under our provision, it's only for attorneys, not for staff.
We're asking for the staff, 6%.
We are asking on this for the staff to receive the 6%.
That's correct, because that is what happened to the Public Defender's Office under the former Attorney General. The legislature, former legislature, former Attorney General, the legislature had granted a 6% increase for support staff for the Public Defender's Office, but they did not include the support staff for the Attorney General's Office. So we're trying to this is the parity that we talk about. It's not the bonus, the pay incentive on the other bill on the prosecutor sort of thing. Thank you.
So that means 22 plus 6, or no? 22 is separate, and 6 is for the attorneys. Okay.
6 is for the non-attorneys, the staff.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So you need authorization for a 6% increase for non-attorneys.
Yes, Madam Speaker, and as well as the appropriation that was included, right? The appropriation was included in our budget, and the authorization to do that, to increase the salary to 6% for
It
the non-attorney
was or
staff.
was not?
It was not included?
It's a separate provision. My apologies. It's a separate provision. We did not include it because there's no authorization to include it. So that's why it's a separate provision.
Okay, so you need an additional amount over the 4 million to cover that.
Yes.
All right. And This case management system, 157,000, is this a new project or is this something that's been worked on for years?
We have been trying to get the new updated PCMS. This year, we are about to award, and this will upgrade our system so that it's in line with the courts.
All right, are the merit bonuses covered in your request? Your requested amount?
No, we did not include the,
So that would require an additional 746,000 over the 4 million plus the 6% plus the 746 for merit bonuses?
yes, ma'am.
And what about those increments and military leave without pay? Included in the budget or not?
Yes, that's already included. Actually, the military leave without pay benefits and the increments, you're talking about the number one
Yes.
question? That would actually be paid this fiscal year.
Okay, great. Also paid already. So this merit bonus, do you have the authority to do that, or you need authority as well? Isn't this, if they're entitled to it, why isn't it included in the budget?
I believe we have the authority to pay it.
I think so. Should be.
Yes, it's included.
So can you just confirm later whether that 746 is included in your 4 million?
Yes,
All
I
right.
will.
And then the positions filled, you said 34 positions filled from January to present. Can you just tell us how many, those are from authorized vacant positions. So out of how many was that? That's from FY23 authorized vacant positions. You filled 34.
Yes, we filled 24. Did you want the list of positions? I mean 34. Did you want?
No, I want to know how many, out of how many vacant?
My apologies, I don't have that number.
Was it like 70?
That sounds correct.
This 34, so what about going into FY24? Are you asking for funding for all of the vacant positions that you currently have, and how many are those?
Yes, we are asking for the vacant positions, and there are there are 67 vacancies.
Going into FY24 or currently, and so you're hoping to fill all of those, and you
I'm
have
sorry,
asked
sir,
for...
could he repeat that? I didn't hear the number.
Sorry. Could you please repeat how many vacancies?
Sorry, Senator, 67 vacancies.
All right, so the 67 vacancies, you have asked for funding, that's included in your budget requests, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, and you currently still have about, out of, let's say, 60, you've got 34 positions filled, you've got about 30, less than 30 positions still vacant, so you've got that extra funds. Are you able to use that right away to pay the merit bonuses, or something that you have authority to pay, the 22%?
I believe we could do the merit. I'm not sure about the 22%. I think we need authority for that. My goal was to wait until the end of the fiscal year to see how much funds we are. We are reserving it in case we are able to hire prosecutors.
Because we're actively hiring these attorneys, and I mentioned their salaries are ranging from $100,000 to maybe $140,000, depending upon the number of years that they have. So that's why Tom's figures are kind of fluid right now, because we're actively, and I've got the HR here, we probably have at least 7 or 8 active recruiting going on off island, which brings that figure up to maybe 500,000 that we need for those attorneys. So from my perspective, the premium staff that we need are attorneys. Whether we're talking about investigators and these lower staff, paralegals and so forth, obviously those aren't as expensive. So that's why when Tom is telling me how much money we have, I'm asking to keep the reserves for these work-in-progress type of recruiting applications that we have. And we have at least, I believe, 7 or 8 active employment listings in the states right now. And we're focusing on California, Texas, areas that are more acquainted with our part of the world. But interestingly, we're getting them in from New York, Florida, things like that. So this is that kind of amorphous moving target, Madam Speaker, and why Tom has a little bit of difficulty talking about this, because I constantly tell him, don't use up the money for my lawyers, because when they're ready to move, we need to be able to pay them and have the money.
All right, so the money that you're reserving to hire these lawyers in the next few days, this is, there's nothing left after that to cover the merit bonuses or the 22%?
Right. We did the analysis for the 22%, and even if we had the authority, we don't have the sufficient funds. And then we have the other moving variable, which is the rent. This moving down to Agaña, which is saving rent, but it's still a rent, a moving target, moving costs and so forth. So we do not have sufficient funds to hire these lawyers that we need and to pick up the 22% in our current budget, which is, I think it's $300,000, just to finish off this fiscal year. That sort of thing. That's my understanding.
And those 7 lawyers in active recruitment are going to serve in which division?
Well, prosecution is my primary request, but a lot of them have a civil background experience. And again, as lawyers, we can train them to be prosecutors, especially if they're civil litigators. I believe that gives you more than enough skill to quickly adapt to a prosecution type of setting if you've appeared before juries and so forth. But I mean, the way that they're coming in is, if I got the offer, I'll probably be able to change my life in about 2 months. So it's even the ones that we have that want to come in, it's not like they're right out of law school and ready to pack and come over. They're wrapping up their practices. They're asking questions like, can I at least wrap up this case but come to Guam, but have that ability? And I would have to say no, because we can't allow outside employment, those sorts of things. The Supreme Court has been great. They increased the ability to practice law in Guam from 4 years without a license, if you have a license in another state, to now 8 years. So the Supreme Court has assisted our office, but it's coming down to a case-by-case basis, but it's expensive. And everybody's looking to get the most they can get for the salary structure that we have here. We're looking at the ability to moving expenses. I think we have, 2 tons of moving expense authority. We have a plane ticket authority to give them a plane ticket, but I think that's the most that we can offer them. So, but ultimately, it hits the budget in a large, about $100,000 or more type of expenditure to bring these lawyers in.
All right, I'm just concerned, I guess, because we're juggling what employees are entitled to
Yes.
versus potential employees.
Right. The 22%, we determined that we were not capable, we didn't have the legal authority to do it. And then the budgetary authority, again, when I took office in January, there were at least 4 waves of people leaving the office, whether it's new policy direction or what. Before I came in, about a month into the office, 2 months, 3 months, they were just leaving in kind of waves. That's where the number of 70 came from, I believe, partly that.
All right.
So, Madam Speaker, it's been a moving target. We've saved money, but at the same time, we never had enough lawyers to begin with. And the former AG, I believe he had about 7 or 8 in prosecution. We've had lawyers coming in and out, leaving sort of the office sort of situation. So it is a moving target. The 22% I understood was not part of the original budget requirement. So we would be, taking from Paul to give to Peter sort of thing.
Well, I can understand that, but the authority part, I don't, because we didn't give authority for anybody to give the 22% pay raise. That was something done totally by the governor.
Right.
She did it at a certain point and made it effective. All that the bill that Senator San Agustin sponsored was give money.
Right.
And we also gave money for DOA to implement this government-wide.
Right. So the question is, was it an unfunded mandate? It was an unfunded mandate because the budget that we entered into, the former AG accepted and received in fiscal year 2022 was for a certain amount. The 22% added on top of that amount. So
Perhaps
it's an unfunded mandate.
if the Attorney General's office was not covered by that appropriation to the Department of Administration. So I understand the money issue, and if DOA is not paying for your employees, that's an issue, and that can be resolved. But the authority, I think, came from the governor. I mean, that was her call. We don't control that your employees are covered by the government pay plan, so they should be paid according to the government pay plan.
Yeah, right now because
right.
that's a legal interpretation, we haven't delved into that. But then also, if we're
Well,
talking
we're
as
going
a,
to resolve the money part, hopefully, right? But I still think you should take it up with DOA, why they're not covering your employees under that appropriation that we gave to them.
I know there are discussions, Madam Speaker, thank
All
you.
right, thanks. And so this, in part of your presentation, you asked for 15% to procure consultants, experts, expert witnesses, as opposed to the current 5%. Why such a large increase?
Because of the, this doing more with less, since we can't find the lawyers out there to do this work, we have contracts with private attorneys to fill the gap when we don't have enough attorneys. I believe we may have 4 or 5 contracts with private law firms to essentially, on an hourly basis or however we work it out, we've got even a family division attorney that's on a contract that's doing a certain amount of work on contract and keeping up our family division, which deals with CPS cases and so forth. So this is the money that I believe Tom is referring to. It's the contractual, and we do not like contract attorneys. We would prefer to hire a full-time employee, but when you've got prosecution functions where we don't have enough prosecutors, and remember the judges added 1 more judge to the bench, and they're impervious, and I actually have an open meeting set with the clerk of court and the administrator of the courts to try to allow us more Zoom time versus going down to the courtrooms, because what they've done is they've taken the prosecution function and not just kept it to 2 or 3 judges, they've increased the number of judges that are handling the prosecution function, whether it's in the morning, in the evening, or the afternoons, which means that 1 attorney has to physically be available just to staff that judge. And that's what's causing problems, in addition to the trials, the motion practice, everything else. So that's why, in long-winded answer to your question, Madam Speaker, that is where the money is being allowed for, contractual for lawyer services. We have, I think, several law firms that we have contracts with on an as-needed basis, sort of thing.
How many, you said you're trying to get 23 prosecutors?
Well, my goal is 21. I believe they put 25.
Okay, and you currently have how many?
See, what we're doing, they have 10 in the office, but it's fluid because we're grabbing from the civil division,
Yes.
Pulling them over to the prosecution to man these courtrooms. Even in our family division, child support is having attorneys come over. So we're basically shifting lawyers according to the need in the office.
How many litigation lawyers, civil litigation,
Okay.
how many lawyers are assigned to that division?
Madam Speaker, 6 currently. There is 1 out on extended sick leave as well.
And the,
I'd ask everyone that speaks, please state your name other than the Attorney General and Tom, just so that everybody's reminded of who you are. Thank you.
Sorry, Deputy Attorney General for the Civil Division, Graham Botha, responding to the Speaker.
okay, thank you. I'm still concerned about, of course, I want to support the filling of the positions in the AG's office, especially those in prosecution, civil litigation, and those who are advising our agencies. We are getting a lot of complaints from the agencies, I'll just put it frankly, that, it's taking a while for them to get advice. Not in all cases, but in some. And so we really need, if we're going to put additional money, for that to be the result, that they are going to all feel satisfied that they're getting prompt services. I know that because of the shortage of lawyers, that you've kind of redirected them, and someone that used to cover 1 agency is now covering 3.
Yes.
So I'm not going to question how you're doing that, but on the agency side, I'm just going to tell you we are getting those kind of complaints, that,
Madam
that
Speaker?
they want more attention from their attorneys and more prompt attention.
Madam Speaker, if I may address that briefly, I can, and I believe everybody at this table is aware that I am customer service oriented, and I take daily phone calls from the mayors, from directors, anyone that needs a quick contract processed out of our office. And Mr. Botha knows this personally because he gets the phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes to get this contract out. Just the other day I had Guam Behavioral asked me to process out a contract. I had the public auditor, I think a few days ago, ask for 2 contracts to be processed out of Guam Ancestral Lands Commission and another commission. So it kinds of, I'm a little bit curious on who's saying this, because my phone call is published, my email is published, they are contacting me, we are doing this. It's customer service oriented. We have a 30-day turnaround time for the opinions, legal opinions. And I will take the responsibility for a legal opinion not coming out because Mr. Botha is emailing them to me, and I have a list, but obviously when you issue a legal opinion, I have to think about it, and I have to question the deputies on is it the proper interpretation that we want to come out of the AG's office. So, Madam Speaker, I with all due respect, I would say that we're performing much better than we did under the complaints that I heard from the former administration about not even issuing legal opinions. And several senators have resent to me opinion requests, and they are probably sitting on my desk because when I sign it, I make sure that I understand completely and I can talk about it. So, Madam Speaker, that should not be a concern for the legislature. We are taking lawyers that are trained both in civil and criminal. All lawyers are trained in civil and criminal, and doing the work in both areas of our office. And that's why, again, I digress into this 5 lawyers, $500,000. I don't want that money to be taken away because I need prosecutors, I need corruption attorneys, I need civil attorneys, those sorts of things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The pay adjustment authorization in our current budget for, there was a 6% pay adjustment for non-law enforcement personnel in the public defender's office. And then there was a provision in the budget that says any pay adjustment for non-law enforcement personnel authorized under Part 2 of Chapter 7, which is for the public defender, shall be applicable to attorneys. Oh, I see. That's the issue. Okay. That's a mistake. All right. So one more question about the government claims. So it's not under your budget, but it is pretty much determined by you what these amounts are going to be. The current proposal by the governor is to fund it at $75,000. Do you feel that that is sufficient? I've been looking at your reports. Some of them are over $2 million.
Yes, may I have Deputy Joe Guthrie address that on the government claims fund?
Like more money for the government claims fund. Yes, my name
Could
is...
you please state
yes,
your name?
I'm sorry, my name is Joseph Guthrie. I'm the Chief Deputy Attorney General, and we would like more money for the government claims fund. Many of the claims are relatively small, but then we have the occasional claim that essentially busts the budget. And our problem is mainly with contract claims that, in my view, should be paid out of the appropriations to the agencies. Although we are still getting claims that are contract claims and really should not be paid out of the claims fund. So, we would like more money for the claims fund, and we will exercise vigilance about restricting the claims fund to payments for torts, which are of course injuries and so forth like that.
So where would the contract claims come from?
Well, a contract claim might be with a
No, I mean, how would you, if you're not going to pay contract claims from that fund anymore, where would those get paid out of?
well, the law says that contract claims should be paid from the budget of the agencies, although that has not been observed strictly, and when we came in, we found that there were some contract claims that were being paid out of the claims fund. So we have taken steps to eliminate that practice.
Okay, so both contract and tort claims will still go through the Government Claims Act, but the fund itself will only be used for torts, is what you're proposing?
That's right.
All right, so what amount do you feel we should be funding that fund at for FY24?
Well, of course, we would like more money, always.
Do you ever deny a claim for tort, for harm, based on no money in the fund?
No.
Okay.
Obviously, we would evaluate whether or not they're legally entitled to that based on the facts and evidence.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I think just because everything is becoming more expensive, let's raise it to 100,000. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard otherwise.
Do you find any law that requires us to give any certain amount to that fund?
There's no law.
All right.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie indicated to me maybe 100,000 would be a safer amount.
More appropriate than the 75,000?
Based on his
Okay. Well, I was
experience.
just surprised because some of these reports, you guys give a quarterly report, some of them are 2 million, 1 million
Probably
in
contract.
claims paid.
Yeah.
Oh, because of the contracts that were being paid?
Yeah. I see the
Yeah,
contracts.
those are contracts.
All right, okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure my colleagues are going to cover all the other questions that I still have, so I'll allow them. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again to for all of your work to the Attorney General's office.
Thank you,
Thank you, Madam
Oversight Speaker. But you're going to end up being the last to close before I officially close. Senator Tello, my vice chair, and then you'll be followed by Senator Jesse Luan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to my colleagues, and of course, good morning to the Attorney General's office and the public that's listening in. This is one of the most, I think, people who want to listen to what's going on at the Attorney General's, because, like you said, it's a very important agency, and the public is wanting to have a lot of questions, because I get these questions sent to my office. So if anybody asks why I always ask a lot of questions, it's because I bring it forward to be answered. And I'm going to go to the claims, again, the claims fund, because I believe that we had a law that was in the 35th Guam legislature, as well as the 30, I think we put it in the budget bill, but we authorized 500,000 by law to go into the claims fund. We had increased it. I believe there is a law for the claims fund, or the amount that's paid off. No, you're right. It's the amount that it's paid out, that the Attorney General can't go over a certain amount. So I think it's 100,000. The current law, I mean, not the current, the previous law was like about 100,000, and then up to 200,000. And then we changed the law up to 500,000 on payout. So, okay, yeah, that was the confusion there. I want to go back to Tomas, still kind of confused on this 22% pay raise. And like the speaker mentioned, this is already by law, and you're included. I think the Attorney General is included in the pay plan. So my question is, the money that we appropriated for this 22% went to DOA to pay out. So why are you requesting it in your budget when they have the money to pay it out?
It's my position that that's not what the position they've taken. They expect it to come out of our budget. That is my understanding at this point. But we are still in discussions with Mr. Byrne on that.
But yet...
They have not offered that we'll take care of it, no problem.
But you guys are the attorneys. Can't you let them read the law and explain the law to them, that the money went to them to appropriate for the 22%?
That is something that probably one of the legal opinions that we
Because
have to work on.
that's $1 million right there, if you add the two up. It's about $1 million. You're asking for it to retro back in April, and then you're asking for,
Right.
for the FY 24 budget, 600. That's $1,048,000 something and change, if I'm not mistaken, right? Okay, so I'm curious to see what happens after you speak to DOA, and if we need to put that in the budget bill to clearly spell out, the money that we appropriated for this 22% pay raise on the pay plan, then.
Thank you. That would always make things clear when we see that sentence, that makes it clear to them.
But you did see the pay plan, because there is a, what what is it, a spreadsheet that actually has the departments and agencies, and the Attorney General is on that?
We're not on that list. That composes of that amount, the 16
Okay, so
million.
you're not on the pay plan then?
We were at the, I believe, the chairman's.
Okay, can
the
you
staff
speak into the mic,
kinda showed it.
Doug? I
Yeah,
could barely hear you, yeah.
I believe that was brought to we brought that to the attention of the staff, that we weren't on that originally. Then we went into further discussions with Mr. Byrne, and we still haven't come out to a resolution on it yet. So, but yeah, we weren't on the original, my understanding.
Okay, so that's different. That's why I requested, during this 22% pay increase, that it's attached to the bill itself to spell out so we can actually see who is getting this 22%. And that was a request that I made to be placed on the bill, and it was never done. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough of my colleagues in the legislature to incorporate that, because then that would clearly spell out whether you were entitled to that under the pay plan. So I guess we're going to have to clarify that.
Thank you.
Okay, the other question I had is regarding the vacancies that was spoke about earlier. And you did put in your testimony that you have filled 34 positions, since. But how many of the positions, and it wasn't clear, maybe it was kind of like roundabout way of answering the question, 34 positions have been filled from January 3rd to present. But how many positions have not been filled that has been appropriated for those positions? In the FY23 budget? While they're looking that up, Tomas, I know you have your staff there looking it up. The second part to that question would be, how soon would you be able to fill that position before the end of the fiscal year? So there's two parts to that. So first, how many of those positions? And I'd like to know the money amount of that, because to me, that would be considered, if you can't get them hired before FY24, I'd like to know how much lapses you'll have at the end of the year.
My apologies, Senator.
Sure, no problem.
There are 37 vacancies that were approved. They amount to 3.5 million. Currently, 20 are in active recruitment. 9 of them are for general crimes attorneys, and 8 for support staff that are outside the 20 that were actually, or that were actively engaged in. And then the total was 3.5.
So it's 3.5, so you have filled all the vacancies for FY23 that was appropriated for?
There were 74 total vacancies.
Okay, 70.
We have filled.
Okay. These were empty vacancies, right, for FY23?
Yes.
Okay, and then of that, 37 has been filled, correct?
37 is pending.
Oh, pending.
34 is what we actually filled. Sorry, the numbers aren't adding.
Okay, say that again, please.
34 were filled.
Okay.
And we still have 37 pending.
Okay, 37 pending. Of the 37 pending, that means $3.5 million is still been appropriated in FY23 to fill those positions, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you anticipate, Tomas, just a guesstimate, how much in lapses do you anticipate it for FY23 in lapses?
Right now, my projection is a little, almost $1 million, but that does not include if we were able to hire the attorneys that are currently interested in coming to our office. So we're actually reserving as much as we can because we do want to be able to fill those positions because attorneys really are hard to find.
Sure.
And these are senior or
Yeah.
very seasoned attorneys, and that's what we're really looking for.
So probably in about, when we go into budget hearing, we'll probably ask you, again, what is the lapses that you have currently on hand so that we can kind of gauge because, you're the third one that I've come across that has increased their budget substantially. And if we can find ways to, justify that or find funding that can be carried over into the next fiscal year to cover those costs. So right now, I'm looking at 3.5 million in lapses, but your guesstimate is 1 million, so it sounds to me like you're almost going to be able to spend $2.5 million by the end of the fiscal year. And you receive all of your allotments, Tomas? No problem with the allotments? They've been coming in on time?
No problems with allotments for us.
Great, that's good. Yeah, I don't, if they did, yeah, they'd probably get sued if they didn't give you your allotments. Special revenues. Do you get any money from the special revenues account? I don't think you do. You don't have any, no, never mind. Question asked, answered. Do you receive any funding from like the opioid settlement agreement, also any kind of tobacco settlement agreement from the U.S. that actually provides money to the Attorney General's office to set up, your own office within there and to hire another attorney to deal with these settlements in the states that Guam has been awarded?
Admin costs for Fred.
Sorry, Senator. We do get money from the opioid settlements.
Okay, please speak into the, mic, okay.
We do receive money from the opioid settlements. I believe we have already given out 1.4 million. The biggest one is the Janssen settlement. But
The what?
Janssen, Johnson & Johnson is the company. They actually prepaid 5 years of the settlement. So for the next 5 years, we'll only be getting about 17,000. So this year we probably received maybe 25,000. And that's pretty much what we will receive for this year because of the upfront payment from our biggest settler.
That's the only account? That's the only lawsuit account?
There are several lawsuits. Sorry, I haven't been following it for the last 6 months or so. I believe there are 7 right now, and then there may be 3 that's still working its way through.
Okay.
So there are other settlements that should be coming in.
What do you do with the funding that comes in?
The funding by law has to go to the Opioid Trust Fund, and there is an advisory committee that is set up statutorily that would determine what amounts go to where. So the council would determine. We act more as an administrator for whatever the council decides.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It's only $25,000 a year?
For the next 5 years, only because the major one had prepaid. After that, we'll need to see how much would come in. There's a schedule that they're supposed to be sending out yearly.
Okay. Attorney General Moylan, you mentioned, all the work that you're doing at the Attorney General's office, and greatly appreciated. I've been to your office. I visited you, I think, when you first came into office, and met with many of your employees that are there, and appreciate them there. They were very hospitable and very helpful. So I want to give kudos out to the staff at the Attorney General's office. Thank you so much for answering my calls or directing me, especially Mr. Wilfred Alfred Legui. He's been very helpful to the legislature. Greatly appreciated. However, when I did meet with you in January and February, I did provide you, like you mentioned earlier, several requests to the Attorney General's office on opinions. And one of them was regarding the OPA Port Authority report that was put out, and that was in February. And I have yet to hear from you on that. And we're already in July, so I greatly appreciate if I can get a response regarding that, okay?
Yes, Madam Senator.
Okay. Sole source that you have in here, you're requesting to, the sole source section, is that also being requested in your FY24 budget? Or is that just a request? It's on, you don't have the page number on these printouts, but it's requested provisions. Is this just a, notwithstanding any of the provisions of law, in pursuit of public interest, is authorized to use up to 15% of the appropriations? This is something that you're just requesting to put in the budget bill?
No, we're requesting that it be increased. Currently, it's at 5%, and it's been at 5% for several years.
This
So
is
we're asking-
legislation?
Yes, to raise
Yeah.
it up to 15.
Okay, I appreciate you putting that too, to help the Attorney General's office. That would make, things a lot smoother, and for you to be able to address, the crime on Guam. And so I'm sure the Oversight Chair will bring this to our attention when time comes. But, so that is just a request. You mentioned earlier about PCs, Attorney General, hire PCs. What are PCs?
They're the federal program coordinators.
Okay.
I find the federal programs as a ripe area, as I did when I was the Attorney General originally, of bringing in a tremendous amount of funds, and we need to have the PCs do their work, contact their federal counterparts, and find out more funding for us. Because I remember we had family violence attorneys that were fully federally funded, things like that. The only problem we're facing with that now is that when we get an attorney in, we can't just pigeonhole them into family violence cases because we need that person. It's almost a triage in prosecution. And I'm trying to work with the courts to give us more time so that we have the 48 hours to charge these magistrates that come in daily. That takes up so much of our energy in that office to be dealing with Guam Police Department arrests. And we're trying to work with the court so we can get the full 48 hours. But there's a lot of logistical problems that we're having to solve in the AG's office, and a lot of it's dealing with the prosecution, the daily number of criminals that are being arrested.
How many do you have on
or
staff
defendants.
currently?
I'm sorry?
How many do you have on staff currently?
We have 10 in the prosecution. I'm informed by my deputy here.
And how many more are you requesting for in this budget bill?
This budget bill is 25. I believe there's 25 with the chief prosecutor. She requested 25.
Is that 25 for FY24, including that 10 that you already have on staff?
No, a total.
So that's 30, so you're asking for 35 in total
Excuse
to
me.
be funded? No.
My original statement of 21 is correct. It's 21. We only have 10 now, so we would be looking at 11 more.
11 more. But in the FY24 budget, you are now asking for, it is a full 21.
Yes.
Correct?
That's for other.
Okay, so the budget bill does request for 21,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it does.
So 10 of those will be, I'm sorry, you have 10 on staff and you're anticipating to get 11 more, right? Okay. These are non-classified, they're not classified employees, of course, right? They will be classified?
They normally bring them in as classified employees, right?
Classified or unclassified?
For attorneys, we normally bring them in as classified.
No, I'm talking about the program coordinators.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about program coordinators. So are the numbers wrong that you gave me, 21 and 10, or am I correct? I asked how many program coordinators do you have on staff currently?
We apologize. I thought you meant attorneys, prosecutors specifically.
No, program coordinators.
We have 3 on staff right now. One is on long-term military. So in essence, we have 2.
Okay, so, well, three that are being paid, right, currently? And then how many more are you wanting for the FY24 budget, including the 3?
We're asking, you want the total?
Total, yes.
We're asking for 6 PCs.
So 3 more?
Yes.
Okay, so need 6. Because I do understand the importance of these program coordinators. You know, it's almost like having a paralegal, if you think about it. You know, they're helping you guys out, you know, big time. And this would eliminate, be more cost efficient and eliminate a lot of the legwork that attorneys don't really need to do. They can have someone else do it. So I just want to make sure that is funded in the budget bill. I do see the importance of these program coordinators. Okay, and they will be unclassified, correct? Or will they be classified?
They should be classified.
They should be classified?
Yes.
What is the total cost of these, all 6?
Senator, just as clarification, we find that the most useful FTE staffers are the paralegals and the investigators for the attorneys. For the attorneys, we're trying to hire more paralegals and investigators. The PCs are more of a support staff that tell us that we can hire another investigator or an attorney because of a federal program that they're trying to
Right.
take advantage of.
But a lot of these program coordinators can do what a paralegal does, you know?
They're definitely, they're very
Yeah.
talented.
Yeah.
If
I'm
you
sure you're
can
not going to hire
qualify as a
just anybody
paralegal-
off the street, right, Doug?
That's correct. That is correct, because you could actually, and I just heard that the other day, you can have a PC actually serve as a paralegal. And that is
Exactly.
exactly what we're doing right now,
Right.
too.
And
We're
that
looking
cost
at-
is substantially different
Well, right now, I think the cost is about,
between the paralegal and the PC, correct? So how much is the PC total in 6?
It's about $500,000 for the
500,000,
6. And that
okay.
includes the benefits.
Okay, thanks, Tomas, for that. Okay, the white-collar crime division in the Attorney General's office, how many attorneys do you have working in that, the white-collar crime division?
I have one fully staffed attorney for it with 2 investigators, but that person actually taps into our prosecution, the general crimes, for assistance. And this
So-
is that sharing that we're doing in the office.
So only one attorney?
One attorney.
In the past, there's been at least 2 in the Attorney General's office.
When I was in the AG's office, I believe we had 4. By the time I left, we had 4 white-collar government corruption attorneys.
And you're going to ensure that this department will be staffed?
Yes, we are attempting to work with the public auditor and get the cases that are ready to be charged prepared, but we have to be ready for going to trial immediately too. So we're balancing the evidence, the ability to take it all the way within 45 days to trial quickly. That is one of the priorities of the AG's office. Obviously, it's a prosecution function. It's a nonviolent crime category. The violent crimes are the priority, and the nonviolent crimes become the secondary, but they're both within that high priority at our office.
Attorney General Moylan, I'm not going to belabor this. This is a very important division. It covers everything, especially government, government employees, and we're accountable to the people of Guam. I mean, we've lost a lot of trust in our government agencies, our government officials, our government elected officials. So this is a really important agency in your department, but I'm not going to belabor this because I'm hoping that the oversight chair will have a roundtable on this particular division of your agency, okay?
And Senator, if I may amplify what you're saying, because I've heard this from many different senators, the concerns that you're raising. What we see the Government Corruption Division primarily doing, saving taxpayer money, which is coming from the legislature that is arguably being abused, and stopping the injury that not following the law is causing by government officials. Those are 2 of the categories that are being looked at and are being investigated and prosecuted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm pleading with our oversight chair to hopefully have after our budget hearings that we go through, that we can have an oversight with regards to this section of the Attorney General's office. I think it's needed desperately. Do you need any money for any federal matching funds?
Yes, it's already included in the budget.
Okay, and what is that amount? I'm sorry, federal matching funds. It's okay, I got it. I'm sorry, I have it. The last question I have is, your IT department within the Attorney General's office, you have a lot of critical information. We had the hospital in front of us who's already been breached. You know, we know that University of Guam has also been hacked, as well as GCC. I do appreciate your website. It has a lot of information. But what are you doing to protect your agency with any kind of cybersecurity issues or breaching of your information?
Senator, we have our head of our IT. My understanding is that he has made sure that our system has the integrity it needs, but also the upgrade that we're talking about. They're no longer servicing, I understand, the Justware. It's no longer a supported product. So it's not, well, I think
obsolete.
It's the same, it's by the company, it's the same company, but they're no longer providing the updates for it. So that was one of the urgencies why we want to complete this upgrade, which is consistent with the court. And we just received a grant from the court as well, which is deferring some of the money that we're requesting, I understand. So it's in line with what you're saying. I'm not a cyber expert here, and the way that these guys work, you know, they're at different levels. So I actually share your concern that if we don't upgrade our system, then we could be subject to it. But I have taken steps to maintain off-site full backup. So if they tried to take down our system, we could use the backup system.
You do have a contingency plan
off-site.
then in place.
Yeah.
Well, thank God, because
Yeah.
you know, the hospital didn't, you know. So I think this is something that you really need to look into.
Thank you.
You know, technology, we rely on it. We saw what happened during, you know, this last typhoon. Everybody was down. They couldn't even move an inch. They couldn't even buy things with their cards anymore. I mean, cybersecurity is one of the biggest growing issues in the world.
Yes.
And Guam is no exception
And
when it comes to
especially with
that.
AI. Their ability to hack the systems with that artificial intelligence now is rising to a
Absolutely.
new level. That's why I joke with the IT guys, just unplug it from the wall.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I appreciate that you are concerned about it, and I just, you know, I'm encouraging you, and whatever you need from me to help you to move in that direction to protecting your IT section of your agency. And I recommend that you do work with the Office of the Governor's IT department. They are so well equipped, and I'm just really surprised why many of our autonomous agencies and other agencies don't utilize them. Because now the hospital is actually utilizing them because of what happened to them. So I think you can save some money by going to visit with, I think it's Francis, not sure his name over there, over at the IT department.
thank you, Senator.
I'm losing his,
I have my IT representative here. and
Who is
he's
your
listening
IT
to-
rep here?
Here right now is William.
Can you introduce yourself, please? Because you might be the guy that we're going to be seeking.
Excuse me, did you swear in? Were you put under
You
oath
just-
before you speak? If not, then you,
Yeah.
May we swear him in?
He's just
Okay,
going to,
okay,
yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead.
he's just going to, introduce himself. Go ahead.
Hello, Madam Speaker. Yeah, my name is William Zayas. I am part of the.
Oh, can you
IT.
speak into the mic? Many of us are deaf up here. So have a seat, yeah, and just go ahead and introduce yourself. And if you can tell me just a little bit about your IT department.
Yes, my name is William Zayas. I'm part of the IT
Go,
department.
speak into the mic. Don't be shy. We're not going to bite, you know. Well,
Yeah,
some of us won't.
Okay, can you hear me now? All right. Yeah. Yeah, my name is William Zayas. I'm part of the IT department. I pretty much, help with the technical side and then also with the security side. I know that next week I'll be attending a cybersecurity training that that I was assigned to, and then help, with the agency in performing all the technical needs, and then also the technical issues that will be concerned when receiving either cyber attacks and how to.
Do you oversee the website as well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so you cover it all, right?
Yes.
Okay, well,
we do
very-
take care of the
yeah.
websites and yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
everything, so.
Okay, well, it's good to know that you're being trained on. I thank you so much for coming up and because you're a very instrumental and vital part of this agency, you know, and if anything happens, they're going to look at you.
Yes.
That's the
Definitely.
face, everybody, that, you know. But again, thank you to everybody at the Attorney General's office. Like I said, you guys have been very helpful, you know, when asking any of my questions that I have, and I appreciate your dedication to this agency. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Tom, you know, all the add-ons and the requests, I'm hoping it's in your budget. It's not one of those things we have to try to figure out and add it. In other words, if you ask for a position, it should have been in your budget digest, okay? So that all my colleagues will be able to look at it and not say, how much more are they asking for? What are their, and it should have been, because that's what this hearing is about. Okay, so I'm hoping it's all here, so that as they ask the numbers, they can turn to it and say, I can see it. I need a PC, I can see it. Not I need something, but I didn't put it in writing other than I'm putting it on the presentation, because the presentation can only go so far, but this one will go all the way to the floor. So if it's not there, por favor, update it, okay, update it, and so that we can read it as one good document. Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
Doug?
Chair. We'll make that change.
Okay,
Thank you.
please, I appreciate it. And now you, question by Senator Guåhan, followed by Senator Chris Duenas, and then Tom Fisher. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, General Moreland and
Good morning,
staff.
Senator.
You know, it's disheartening to actually hear that the 22% pay plan, the executive branch didn't apply to the Attorney General's office. My understanding that when the Attorney General position was an elected position, it did not call for a fourth branch of government. So again, it's disheartening to hear that the 22% did not apply to the Attorney General's office.
Thank you. We were concerned when we saw it. It went so quickly.
Well, we had, as previously had been mentioned, that we had asked repeatedly over the days that we debated the issue on who all this applied to. And it was under the impression, we are under the impression, or give us the impression, that it was, of course, the executive branch. And again, unless that changed before we walked in here, you're still under the executive branch, are you not?
That is correct.
Yep.
And I stand very firmly. The law enforcement arm is the Attorney General.
Yes.
It's executive function.
Yeah. Because the only other branch of government that came in and asked to be included in the 22% pay plan was the judiciary. And of course, they would have to ask because they're a separate branch of government, and they don't, are not, of course, part of the executive. And it didn't apply to us. It didn't, the 22 did not apply to the legislative branch. But that being said, I hope that'll be rectified soon. And again, as they had, I assume at this point that all their folks that came in who were experts, and there were the numbers people that knew who all was in the executive branch that said it was sustainable. The worrying factor about that is, as they came and they said the sustainability of the 22% pay plan was only based on the military buildup in Section 30. And they repeatedly said as such. And it was disheartening to hear that the once source of a mainstay of our government and collections is tourism, and so they looked like they were zeroed out in that regard. But anyway, that being said, I hope that be rectified soon and applicable to your office as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
A couple other questions. You talked about the contractual services, and you weren't too keen on contracting outside attorneys.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about contracting outside attorneys, are you talking about contracting outside attorneys outside of of course, the Attorney General's office, law firms here in Guam, or law firms outside of Guam?
We have both, and we've done this for decades in the AG's office.
Okay.
But it's under the control, obviously, of our making sure that the amounts are negotiated, that it was within our fiscal budget, and the purpose of why we can't do it in-house versus why we're farming it out. Now more than ever, because we have a office primarily focusing upon the prosecution and the protection of our public, and then trying to get out these legal opinions as well, and whatever limited cases we have on the litigation.
Are these also maybe specialty areas that maybe you have a shortfall on or something, or?
I don't like to say that, because I think lawyers can get up to speed on many things. For example, the ORDOT landfill closure, that is one of them, and it actually may be the governor's office in coordination with the AG's office. I know that we're dealing with an off-island, Kelly Dry, I believe is the law firm. They are specialized in the landfill closure, so I would defer to that. Although we have Heather Zona, our acting chief prosecutor, who is, I would not want to underestimate her capabilities, but I need her to be the chief prosecutor. So you are correct that in certain areas, lawyers feel not as comfortable in handling, and it would be a better use of resources to contract out that type of law firm because they have a winning track record, and plus you're dealing with a lot of federal court type of issues and going to understanding the different circuits in the United States, forums, shopping, and stuff like that. So I agree with you to a certain extent, Senator, but I don't like it because that's usually the first sentence before an autonomous agency says the AG's office can't handle an airport matter, when in fact they're hiring the same lawyers that used to work in the AG's office that are now working for the autonomous agency up at the airport, Port Authority, stuff like that.
Okay.
So in certain areas, and I would identify the landfill closure type of issues and reopening.
Okay. Is it also safe to assume at this point then that, I mean, because you're not too keen on that, you would rather hire your own in-house attorneys,
Correct.
right?
The salaried attorney is always a better deal for the legislature and our government.
And likewise, it's, I guess, safe to assume at this point that a contracted attorney's hourly wage is not that parity with the in-house attorney, right?
Exactly, because they're getting paid by the hour normally. But as I said, like in our family division, we negotiated a flat fee amount. And that's why we go through Joe Guthrie, Franco Matau. Our whole staff starts looking at it because we're not interested in making private lawyers rich. We got a budget. You guys are telling us how much we have. So we're actually pretty frugal, in my opinion.
Okay. So roughly, your in-house attorney, roughly what is their hourly rate versus a contracted attorney's hourly wage? What is that roughly?
Well, if you were to go out and try to find an attorney normally, I would say it's at least $300 or more an hour.
An hour, okay.
Okay, so you break down whatever the pay scale is for maybe a 30-year attorney would probably be about $40 an hour.
Okay.
And you know, with the benefits and so forth, but I mean, it's substantially different.
Including the bennies, right?
I'm sorry?
Including the benefits.
Including the benefits and so forth. Roughly it's about $77 an hour for, you know, a typical attorney in the AG's office.
Versus 300, basically.
Or more.
Or more.
Yeah, and again, because we don't have that many lawyers out there, and I've been warning everybody, you try to get a divorce on Guam, first of all, try to find a lawyer that's willing to do it, because those are high-intensity cases. And then the amount of the retainer agreement, before I think it was at least maybe $5,000, you know, it would range. It's probably doubling right now. So if they take the case, I could estimate maybe $500 an hour for a domestic case that's going to be contested, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So.
Now, likewise, you are seeking to, I guess, recruit attorneys from off island, right?
Yes.
As well. Now, as one of the recruitment measures, does the Attorney General pay for their flight accommodations and meals, and how long is that?
The only thing we can pay is the one-way plane ticket to Guam.
Okay.
That's under a statute, I understand.
Okay.
And then we understand there's also a statute that allows up to 2 tons, or 2,000 pounds, 1 ton of cargo for their relocation.
Okay.
That's the extent of our benefit package for them to come over here. And then we have to, and then the Supreme Court gave them 8 years to not have to take a Guam bar,
okay.
but
So
they have to be barred in another U.S. jurisdiction.
Okay. So so when you're talking about, because earlier you were talking about attorneys being able to do pro bono work outside, okay? Now, that will be applicable, you're asking that will be applicable for them as well to be able to continue maybe their pro bono work from whatever jurisdiction they came from?
Right, well, then this comes from experience in the past 6 months as I've been recruiting. Some attorneys were saying, I have a case that I've been in for years. I'm willing to come over to Guam and work for you, but can I finish this case up? And they can't give me an exact date before they move over. So I have to tell them I cannot allow that if you become an employee of our office. So it hurts the negotiation in that respect. But again, what I'm asking for is to restore what the federal government does, what Guam has done in the past.
Okay.
I don't know why they took it out. And now more than ever, because we don't have enough lawyers, I need as much flexibility to negotiate with lawyers as I can get. You know, lawyers, they don't normally want to work for the government because you can earn much more on the outside. And that's the problem we're having on Guam. A lot of these private lawyers earn a tremendous amount of money on the outside now that their rates are going up because there's not enough lawyers.
What happens, because you guys are the government attorneys, what happens if, say for example, in your case or anyone in your case is against the government and you are the government attorney, and so what happens with that?
And this is recognized throughout the decades, every attorney has a conflict when they come into the AG's office. The older you are, the more clients you've had before. So I did this 20 years ago. You set up a conflict wall, and then in my case, it would be the chief deputy would take over, and he would become the attorney general for all intents and purposes to handle that case. Like, for instance, I think I had at least 200 court-appointed cases when I came in, so I had to literally print my screen for the staff to let them know for all these criminal court appointment cases I have, I'm disqualified on, and that's where the office has a set procedure to create the conflict wall. So we as professional lawyers, we have that procedure set up. It's been recognized throughout decades in the AG's office.
And also you have the Guam bar that you have to answer to, right, in regards to their ethics. Well,
worst case scenario, you have the Supreme Court of Guam through the Guam bar sits on the ethics board.
Okay. One other question I have here, I know it was asked previously by Senator Taitigui about I guess something in the port. You know, we're in the midst, as the vice chair of the Guam Visitors Bureau, we're in the midst of trying to correct things, an impasse and correcting statute versus bylaws and things of that nature. And I know that the agency had asked the Attorney General's office, and I think they did an in-house investigation and referred some of those findings to the Office of the Attorney General. Likewise, the Office of Public Accountability. And I'm just wondering, because we're attempting, we've got another round table this afternoon. We're attempting to fix, either redo the statute because again, a lot of their bylaws are not in compliance with, or you know, their bylaws are basically, they're going with bylaws and going against what statute has put forth. And so in our attempt to make things better and clearer and be in compliance with open government laws and everything else about the government, we have some bills that we're putting out there to do as such. And so we are also awaiting the Attorney General's opinion on what was forwarded to your office as well. And if again, they weren't in concert, their actions weren't in concert, we need to take corrective measures to make sure that,
yes,
moving
Senator.
forward.
Senator, I know that in the past few months, the GVB attorney, Joe McDonald, has been in communication with me about certain, and as well as Governor Gutierrez, on certain immediate needs of legal opinion guidance.
Sure.
I believe we've kicked out 2 of them that were requested. I'm not aware of any other Attorney General opinion requests, but again, as I was saying to the chairman and to, I guess, Madam Speaker, whenever the opinion requests come in, you know, Civil Division is being given 30 days to get it out to me, and it's probably sitting on my desk. I wish Senator Telo Taitigui was here. I identified the one that she's waiting for. It's on my desk, and that's the one I'm going to have reviewed and out by Monday. At the latest. But I mean, this is how our AG's office is going when the opinions come in.
Well, I know they sent forth supposedly an investigation that is forwarded to your office as well as the,
If you're talking a criminal complaint
yes.
sort of thing, yes, Senator, The Government Corruption Division has over 20 active investigations right now, and GVB's complaints were one of them
Okay.
on the list there.
Yeah.
So I am aware of that.
Okay.
And we're trying to staff the Government
Okay.
Corruption Division so that we can
Sure.
properly.
Yeah. And that's one of the
that-
reasons, again, in our attempt to make things right, we are actually awaiting to see if things were done wrong.
Understood.
And if they were, then we'll need to take corrective actions. If not, then I guess the status quo will prevail, right?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah.
So for purposes of any criminal investigation requests, in addition to the normal General Crimes Division, which has active criminal investigations, the Government Corruption Division dealing with alleged official misconduct, that is also a priority, and I will mention it to
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah,
Rudolph.
yeah, thank you very much. And you anticipate a move, when do you anticipate moving?
Well, because of Mowar's effect on us, we were hoping to have been moved out by August. We do have a continuing provision in our current lease to allow us to continue. It looks like September, we're going to move in phases
Okay.
so to avoid disruption. But interestingly, the same landlord that we're in right now at the ITC is the same landlord who came in as the bona fide bidder for again.
And same landlord, but you still be saving $1 million a year?
Yes, compared to the last
Okay.
the last bid that
Okay.
was there, because they offered the ITC building to be continued, but we chose to move down to Agagna.
Okay. All right, okay. No, I think I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Lums. Senator Dueñas, you have any comments or questions for the panel?
Mr. Chairman, and just a few comments and just a couple of questions, as most of the questions were answered or asked and answered earlier, very thorough. First of all, General, when Department of Corrections came before us for not only their budget, but earlier under oversights, they made a declaration that the Attorney General has lived up to his promise, meaning that you've done what you said you were going to do when you came in, because a lot of more criminals are now at DOC.
Thank you, our team. Yes.
And to the team, so I wanted to congratulate you and everyone from the Attorney General's office for enforcing the law. The second thing is that, General, I want to echo your comments when you opened, and that is that you certainly are not only the Chief Law Enforcement Office, but you are also a frontline agency, given the fact that your prosecution and what you're doing, and hopefully it will continue. I'm hearing now on the streets that it's really having a great effect in terms of, the fear factor out there on those who are distribute methamphetamine, in particularly, that is an epidemic on our island right now.
Yes.
And that those prosecutions coming forward are going to aid the police department and other law enforcement agencies in terms of hopefully cracking down and getting a handle on this epidemic that we have. We have to put bad guys away. We particularly have to get dealers and other individuals held accountable and get this scourge off the street. So it's one of the reasons why I don't have any issues, supporting the request that you've put forward at this time. We'll work with the chairman and see what we can do. I also wanted to make an observation that, to me, because we gave you, and this goes into my question, Tom, because we gave you the carry forward authority, essentially your request is a little bit over $2 million in terms of your overall variance from what the governor's request was, because you were able to use those funds. It's been recognized that we are in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, and so possibly lapses once again will occur. Are you comfortable with us including that as part of the budget provision going forward to accomplish your mission as continuing to carry forward from fiscal year 23?
I thought we were given or we were told no more carryover.
Okay.
And we expect to fully expend all of it. There
Okay.
are other items that,
Okay, well, we'll see in the end then what that looks like, because, boy, that's a lot of money possibly to be able to expend in one quarter, but we'll see. And then, so that's clear then, that when we go into the final discussions and we have, both Office of Finance and Budget and PBMR before us, in terms of how we're going to accomplish this. Because clearly, Tom, what happened in this last fiscal year is you were able to realize everything that you've been able to accomplish up to now by having that close to $2 million carried forward, and that is really what got you to your current 18 million plus appropriation level. So I'm just going to think it's going to be important for our colleagues to understand what we would really be doing going forward here in giving you your full request was actually giving you $2 million in increase to what you currently have because you were authorized that in 2023. I think that's important because perception is everything, right? I mean, you go out there and it seems like, wow, you know, we gave a $4 million increase. The truth is that we've increased, if we do this in this fiscal year, is we've allowed this in addition to the carry forward that you were allowed to use last year.
Thank you for recognizing that, Senator.
Yeah, it really kind of brings it into perspective in terms of where that's at. But Tommaso, I would request then that it is going to be important that you reconcile the fact that the subsequent part of your PowerPoint clarify and make it very clear that that is either embedded in the request or is in addition to the request. The other thing I would mention to you, General, it looks like several of the requests here are in authorizations and verbiage. So you're going to need to review the final budget when it comes out to ensure, because my thinking is that is going to have to be in the miscellaneous provisions portion of the budget, as it wouldn't be a line item, budget amount. So
Thank you.
you're going to, I would ask your team to be very vigilant when the final budget comes out to ensure that those provisions have been placed in miscellaneous provisions. Just want to close with this, General. I know many of our colleagues have said this, but I want to make it as strong as I possibly can. I want to apologize to all those individuals who are part of the general pay plan. It is an insult, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Attorney General, for the Department of Administration to not have recognized that the general pay plan includes your office. And you did not, in my opinion, I want to be on the record today saying this, you did not have a duty or a requirement to request to be part of that, because they should have completely covered that under their request in terms of what was ordered by the 22%. So I encourage you, General, I know that you will always have to have a good relationship, particularly with those who hold the purse strings, but I encourage you to just, with Tomas, write a letter to Department of Administration. I'm going to say request, but I would say language that's a little stronger maybe. Demand that they give you an allotment to immediately do that, because I think it's unfair to those employees who were promised this compensation and were expecting this compensation to sit around and wait.
Demoralizing, yes.
And the reason why it upsets me and burns me up is because of the fact that, you know, the auspices that's being used here is that you were supposed to request this. General, as my good friend Senator Lujan said, I have not seen any legislation that takes you out of the executive branch.
Thank you.
I see you as the elected head of the Attorney General's office who reports directly to the people without question. But the division and every part of the Attorney General's office is an executive branch. And you should, post haste, receive an allotment to take care of your people dated back to April 1 for the general pay plan. And I hope you will take our suggestion to send that letter, and at least one of 15 as a senator here, I will wholeheartedly support that and would join on your letter as a senator saying, get that allotment out right away, take care of our people.
Thank you, Senator.
2 of 15. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all the questions I have for now. And once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for what you're doing. And the strength of your office is going to be the strength of our ability to rid our island of crime and the scourge of methamphetamine and possibly other opioids. And also to make sure that you're right, General, government officials are on notice. This is not your money. This is the taxpayers' money. And you better treat it as such. Otherwise, you're going to be meeting up with you at the courts.
Answering to the jury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Fisher, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, and good morning to the Office of the Attorney General. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Some weeks ago, maybe just a couple weeks ago, I received a transmittal letter from the Office of the Attorney General relating to and transmitting an indictment of 7 government officials, and which is fine. Good luck on that case. But the memo came with the appellation "From the Eagle's Nest." Are you still sending memos out that have that on it, the Eagle's Nest?
Yes, sir.
Can you understand why that would be offensive to millions of people, including myself?
I do not believe it's offensive. I know the history behind the Eagle's Nest of which you're referring to.
For the people who are listening, tell us all about the Eagle's Nest, which was located over Salzburg in the Bavarian Alps.
Well, let's first of all recognize that the American Eagle is the recognized law enforcement, federal government law enforcement.
But why did you choose the Eagle's Nest? That is an extraordinarily offensive thing.
If I may continue, Senator.
Well, just answer the question. Why did you choose the Eagle's Nest?
Well, I'm trying to answer the question.
Go
Senator.
ahead, please.
If you would allow me to continue,
Go
I
ahead.
can explain it. Thank you. The eagle is the symbol of the law enforcement recognized throughout the United States. It's on our FBI and many other law enforcement symbols. The Eagle's Nest is what the symbol of the AG's office has adopted. The Eagle's Nest is where we're at. So whether you want to make the allusion to a European
let's lay the cards on the table. Nazism, German National Socialism.
Senator, are you saying I'm a Nazi?
No, but I will ask that question.
Are you saying that I have any indication that I want to be a Nazi?
What I am saying is that you have adopted Nazi appellations for your office.
I take issue with that. First of all,
Well, I'm
I'm
sure you
offended
would.
by the fact that you're trying to equate me, who has American heritage, with my grandfather, F.L. Moylan, part-time police officer, reservist.
That's why your selection is so shocking.
Are you saying that I'm a Nazi?
I don't know what you think in your
Well, you're
heart. I hope
accusing
you're
me of
not.
being a Nazi. You're
Why are
accusing my
you
whole
choosing-
staff of being Nazis.
Why are you choosing Nazi
Gentlemen,
memorabilia?
Senator Tom, General Moylan, let's get back to the budget.
We're on the budget, sir.
Okay,
And
thank you.
he's expending taxpayer
Senator-
money to advertise a vile, repellent, evil regime.
I'm
That is
offended by the
case.
fact that
Let's
you're saying
move on.
that. I'm an American citizen.
I hope you will.
My family
I
has
will-
strong ties.
I hope you will,
The
in
Moylan
the future,
name runs
I
back
hope
to
you
the
will
American Revolution
express in the future better
and
judgment,
to
sir.
the Custer's battle. The Moylan name is Scotch-Irish and was one of the oppressed people by the Nazis.
Yeah, I've had relatives who were killed by German National Socialism, so
Well,
you do not need to lecture me.
Gentlemen,
So I'm going to
one
continue
at
with
a
my
time,
questions.
please.
Senator, do you wish me to pursue this response?
No, sir, you've answered quite adequately.
Thank you.
I'm shocked by your response, frankly.
Thank you. Senator Fisher, your question.
I note that you have 67 vacancies in office, and these are still in the budget request. Is that correct?
There are not 67, there's about 30-some that are there.
I thought 67 was the number we received earlier.
I think it's been 67, but we filled 30-some.
Could we get an accurate number? He just told us 67. He just told us.
My apologies, Senator. Just trying to clarify. We have hired since the last time we submitted the budget. I probably should have given you a revised staffing pattern, and I will send that in. My apologies. So we are still asking for 37 positions.
All right, I must have misheard. I thought that the testimony earlier was that there were 67 vacancies. And I think I asked for a clarification when the speaker asked that question.
That's correct. Tom, if I'm correct, you said in the beginning of FY23, you were at 67 vacancies, and that's what you reported out. So let's make, what was your vacancy, what was your total vacancies when you, in January? Let's start with January then. What was your total vacancies and how many you hired? That should be an easy question, because you should know how many you hired already. January to present, I mean, so that we just do the numbers real quick. I think you hired 34, so what was your total vacancies in the beginning? Then you minus 34, and then we'll know the numbers. Simple math. Yeah, I'm almost sure, Tom, you mentioned you had 67 in the beginning, then you hired 34, minus 34 from 37, 67 will give you 33. So if you can state that, that will clear the answer with Senator Fisher.
We can settle on 33. It's math.
My apologies.
It's more?
My apologies. We did update a lot of the staffing pattern. We did find errors. So according to the latest staffing pattern, ours is showing 37 vacancies left. When we had, and this is my error, when we had consolidated civil back, there were some calculation errors. So the revised for as of current is 37.
37? Okay, it's 37 vacancies then. Are those 37 vacancies in, are they in the ask for the upcoming budget?
Yes, they are included in the staffing pattern.
Okay. So the Attorney General's office anticipates receiving that money for those positions?
We are hopeful that we would receive it.
Okay. And I'd like to look back on the current fiscal year. How many, roughly there were 37 vacancies throughout the fiscal year because you did fill vacancies in January, correct?
Yes, since January.
Okay. By the way, it just occurred to me, of those fills this past January, were any of them unclassified?
Yes, Senator. Some were unclassified.
I'm sorry?
Yes, some were unclassified.
Of those 37 vacancies, how many were unclassified?
Sorry, I don't have that number. I can tell you the total unclassified in AG's office. Would that suffice?
No, I'm actually looking for the number of unclassified because according to what we received, the unclassified positions, 34 positions roughly, were filled on January 3rd.
6 of those positions, those 34 positions are unclassified.
Unclassified. And they came in on January 3rd?
Throughout the period.
Okay. Do you have any, why was it necessary to fill it with unclassified as opposed to classified position or individuals?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, why did you plug in unclassified people as opposed to classified? I mean, it was January 3rd. I think that was probably the couple days of you guys coming into office.
Yes, my name is Joseph Guthrie, and we hired some people when we came in January as unclassified employees because we felt that we had the authority to hire unclassified employees under the autonomy that is allowed by statute. The AG's office in respect to personnel matters and also fiscal matters.
Okay, yeah, I don't think anybody's questioning your authority to do that. Whether or not it was wise is really the question. And I'm wondering why you would plug in these unclassified employees who, as you know, unclassified employees are subject to discharge at the whim of the employer.
Well, because...
I know you can do it, but why?
Well, because our experience was, although we have a very capable HR section, it takes a long time to jump through all the hoops to get a classified employee on the job. And
Senator, if I may, this has been discussed throughout this hearing and through many AG's opinions in the past. This is an elected office. Like the senators, you guys have the ability to hire unclassified positions, so the question is aptly to the same to the senators. When a new elected official comes in, a policy accompanies that elected official. As the governor has his cabinet or her cabinet, so does every elected official. The mayors are treated the same. The respect given to an elected official to be able to bring in an unclassified employee subject to the discharge by that employer if they don't follow the policy directive that the new elected official has. I think that's been recognized throughout our government of Guam. People don't realize that this is an elected position, whether they want to like it or not. So I believe I have the notes from General Rapadas came to that. I think that opinion that Mr. Guthrie is referring to actually was found with General Rapadas at the time. General Barrett Anderson, she's made numerous adjustments to the office in that respect. So I would say as an elected official, I want the autonomy to be able to hire an unclassified person like you have in order to effectuate the will of the voters, and this is the policy that was brought in with the new Attorney General, consistent with the cabinet again.
I appreciate that, and again, you know, nobody's questioning your authority, just your wisdom.
Well, I don't know what the wisdom has to do with it. You have the right to hire your unclassifieds. I should have the right to hire my unclassifieds. The governor has the right to hire her unclassifieds. What's the point?
Well, I think the point is we all have an obligation to protect the employees of the government
More
of
so,
Guam.
Senator. I am doing that every day in that office.
Okay. Well, we're all glad to hear that. I promise you that. Now, I'd asked earlier about the number of individuals, the vacancies, and whether or not you were still receiving funds for that. And I believe your response, at least as to the present fiscal year, is yeah, you are receiving funds for that, and it's budgeted. The cash, what's your cash position over there?
We do not have a cash account. Our accounts are controlled by DOA,
Okay.
by statute.
All right. How much money is available to you, do you believe, because of these unexpended funds?
My apologies, Senator. Right now, we have approximately 600,000 in
I'm sorry.
600,000 that has been allotted and available. We still get apportioned every pay period. So
Okay.
right now, there's 600,000 available.
600,000? Why can't you use that to start paying the 22%? You know, never mind DOA. You guys got the money, you have the employees, why aren't you paying them the 22%? You've got 600 grand.
The concern was that we would use up all our lawyers' money and not be able to, and again, we go back to the original allocation of the budget, was the last legislature gave us a certain amount of budget without the 22%. That was for a certain amount of lawyers in order to effectuate protecting the public, and that is the priority that I have. Until the legislature provides the 22%, I'm going to hire those lawyers. It comes down to that, Senator Fisher. I'm going to hire prosecutors over giving people 22% that we
believe-
were never funded for.
I believe we did provide the money for you, sir.
I do not believe you did.
I believe we did.
Okay, well,
If-
I'm going to...
If DOA is not releasing it, that's of no concern of ours.
And thank you. I recognize that was Senator Duenas' statement, and because of what you and Senator Duenas and the rest of the senators are saying, I'm going to ask Mr. Guthrie to today, tomorrow, or Monday, meet with Mr. Byrne. No letters, just go in and just reference this budget hearing and ask him for the funds to be cleared. I think that we can do this as gentlemen. I hope that we can do this as professionals, and I thank you, Senator, for mentioning that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that Mr. Guthrie will be meeting with Mr. Byrne as soon as possible to hammer this out, because I am reluctant as a senator to give you an additional 22% on top of what we did. That seems excessive and irresponsible. So
Well,
when
I would dispute
that comes up, we
My
will.
position remains the same. You did not give us 22% extra money. I see no document that showed that. My budget is to hire lawyers, and I'm going to hire the prosecutors, and I'm going to protect this community. I'm not going to be using this weaken the AG's office by taking 22% of my budget so that I can't hire prosecutors. That is the bottom line for me.
Is the chief prosecutor present?
No, she is not. She's actually taking care of cases because we don't have enough lawyers in that office.
Yes, that is true. You do not have enough lawyers. I was looking at a staffing pattern. Evidently, since you've been in office, which is 6 months, 44% of your lawyers have quit. Do you know why?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please
They
tell
do
us.
not agree with the legal policies of this Attorney General. If they wish to leave, there's the door. I am elected by the people of Guam to protect them. This last AG's office lost the election because they weren't protecting the public. I am going to protect the public, and I'm going to use every tool at my disposal in order to hire prosecutors and to put them into courts and to put them before juries, these criminals, and have them convicted. That is my position, Senator. And if you don't want to give me the 22%, then we're going to ask the other senators to help us out.
Okay,
I'm sorry, it's coming down to that. Because I'm not going to play the art of war with you, that you're going to deplete my resources so I can't hire an expensive attorney. Prosecutors are expensive, and not only are they expensive, they're hard to find. I can't find any on Guam other than what I've got right now, and I've got a good team of lawyers. I would rather have a few good, loyal, dedicated lawyers that want to protect this community than to keep attorneys that want to get paid and not do the work or be lazy or just want to leave the office. There's the door. That's the way I was trained. That's the way this office is run. We are to serve the people, and that is what every employee in that office. If you want to be there, be there. If you don't want to be there, leave.
Sir, so 44% of the lawyers, this is math again, in the last 6 months have quit. Do you think it has anything to do with your management technique?
For 6 months in office, Senator, for somebody to leave in January, what management technique can you show? You showed a direction I showed a direction, toughest AG on crime. If you don't want to work, leave. If you don't want to protect our community, leave. And as a senator, we ask for your support.
Have you lost any lawyers in the last 2 weeks?
I'm sorry?
Have you lost any lawyers in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, we had one that just left because she went to the Air Force. She has already been planning to go to the Air Force since last year. But we were using her, and she was agreeing to Zoom hearing from New Jersey. So I don't know what your point is, Senator. I want a dedicated, crack team of qualified lawyers working for me in that office. I was the Attorney General 20 years ago. Yeah. I have the experience. We are winning cases. Mr. Grant here will tell you, 15 trial victories.
Since when?
Since January, sir.
How many dismissals?
What do you mean dismissals?
How many cases have you dismissed?
I don't know. I haven't got that.
Well, you are the Attorney General of Guam, sir. How many cases have you dismissed?
I dismissed a case against a police officer that shouldn't have been charged.
Okay, there's one.
What's your evidence? I wasn't here to talk about the dismissals.
My evidence is you're the Attorney General of Guam charged with knowing that information. How many have you dismissed?
You're making an insinuation. I'm not the chief prosecutor. I don't have that in front of me. But what is your insinuation? Do you have data that we are dismissing cases that shouldn't be dismissed?
Sir, I have to clarify. It's not an insinuation. It's an accusation.
Well, what is your accusation then? Are you saying that we're dismissing?
My accusation is you are driving that office into the ditch. You've lost 44%. That is just unsustainable. And
gonna
you
let
just
Mr.
lost a lawyer this week. Whether, you know, she went for one reason or another, she's gone, and how many other lawyers will be leaving soon? Mr. Attorney General, you have said again and again and again, and you are correct. Your responsibility is to protect the people of Guam, which means that you must run an efficient, effective office, and you are not doing so.
Mr. Fisher.
44%.
Senator Fisher, how can you say that without ever being an attorney general? How can you say that without ever having managed over 150 employees? Mr. Grant wishes to say something.
Well, you wanted the job.
I'm sorry?
You wanted the job.
And
Sorry.
I got it. And
Yeah.
I'm happy I'm there. And I'm going to protect this community as best I can with my team.
Does the other gentleman want to say something?
Yes, he does.
Yes, my name is Grant Olin. I'm the Assistant Chief Prosecutor. Just wanted to address some of the points that you've raised, Senator. Number one, as far as the dismissal issue, it's standard practice that actually cases get dismissed for numbers of reasons, including that witnesses go missing, including material witnesses who have critical information, move off island, or victims recant their statements. There's lots of reasons why a case may be dismissed, and oftentimes they're dismissed without prejudice, which means that we can bring the cases back, recharge them, and we often do that. So that's not unusual by any means. But also, I was prepared for some of the points and questions and comments that you raised, and I just wrote down a couple of things that I wanted to address in advance. Under General Moylan's leadership, we've actually done more with less, and there's evidence that our tough on crime approach is working. We're getting more wins at trial, we're getting longer sentences for criminals, and we're cracking down on catch, release, and reoffend by jailing more offenders before they're released and revoking their pretrial release or probation. We've also seen the level of arrests level off, and there's still much more crime, of course, but we won't be taking our foot off the gas and going after criminals and deterring more crime. And of course, you are an important part of that, an important part of helping us achieve our mission, and we're grateful for your support and commitment to fighting and preventing crime. And so, you know, our goal is always to be fully transparent with you and answer all of your questions. But I believe that under this Attorney General's leadership, we are making great progress and strides to crack down on crime and to restore the faith and trust of this community in government. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, sir. Do you know how many dismissals your office has authored or caused to happen in the last 6 months?
Senator, I haven't been tracking that information, but I'd be happy to go back and pull the records for that if you'd like.
Could you share that with us?
I'd be happy to do that. I will do that, Senator.
Thank you very much.
And Senator, if I may, if you have any data that you want to confront us with right now as to a particular dismissal that's concerning you, I am open. I'm aware of a lot of what goes on in that prosecution unit, so please put it out there.
Okay. Do you have prosecutors, or we'll stick with prosecution just for a little bit, that are exclusively dedicated to prosecution?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
Well, we have Basil, we have our trial team.
Okay.
Yes.
There's Basil O'Malley?
Yes, Your
No,
Honor.
not just Basil Mount, there's several.
Yeah. So, Senator, currently we have 10 designated attorneys in the General Crimes Division.
Exclusively?
Exclusively, yes,
Okay.
That's correct. I can list them all if you'd like.
Okay.
We have Leah Diaz-Uggan, we have Marianne Wolchek, we have Christine Tenario, we have Basil O'Malley, we have Heather Zona, Christine Borja, Chuck Noonan, myself, Grant Olin, Matt Shook, and Renata St. Nicholas.
Okay. Do all of those individuals have trial experience? I don't mean taking a plea in. I mean seating a jury and bringing it to
Definitely.
verdict.
Most every name that he identified there has trial experience or is second chairing trials. There's all the Matt Shook that's there. So our office is geared towards winning cases. We have the trial teams that were set up. We have training going on to take in the new lawyers that don't have as much experience and train them to win their trials. So it's a solid program. We're getting back to the basics. Put criminals in jail. Don't give them a second chance. And, you know, it's working.
Now, how about the white-collar division?
That's an additional attorney. That's Gloria
Well,
Rudolph.
that's why I'm asking about him. Who's in the white-collar division?
Gloria Rudolph, she is the dedicated solely for that purpose. As I said earlier, we adjust attorney assignments according to the need. Prosecution is the primary. Government corruption is the non-violent type of crimes. So government corruption also taps into general crimes since they're both prosecution function.
How much experience does Ms. Rudolph have?
From all indications, I think it's more than 20 years, my understanding.
And how many white-collar trials has she done, from seating a jury to verdict?
I have to check with her. I know she's had trial experience.
Mr. Olin, do you have any idea?
I actually don't have that information, but we could certainly be happy to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, well, I imagine she's very busy. She put 7 people on the same indictment, so.
Excuse me? Excuse me, Senator? I didn't catch that?
Yes, I said she's put 7 people on the same indictment, so I'm sure she's rather busy.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that, but
I was glad to hear you say that you are being frugal, which is important, very important, since the federal money is drying up. Is your office budgeting for uniforms?
I'm sorry?
Is your office budgeting for uniforms?
We're planning on having our AG investigators put into uniforms, yes.
Mm-hmm. And so are you budgeting for that?
Probably. I haven't got the proposal yet, but that is the directive from the Attorney General. These men are quasi-police officers. They're actually police officers, equivalent to law enforcement.
Is it a good idea to put them in a uniform that make them readily identifiable?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Just like it is to mark a vehicle. When the community sees law enforcement, there's less criminals wanting to hurt people.
Okay, and then
That's the principle of law enforcement.
Okay, sticking with the concept of frugality, how much have you budgeted for those uniforms?
It's a work in progress right now, Senator.
Okay. Well, how much are you anticipating spending?
I haven't gotten the estimates yet. But we have, I believe, how many investigators? Roughly about 15? 15 investigators that I intend to put in uniforms from child support to general crimes to civil. All of them are going to be in a uniform. They have firearms. Better that you have a person in a uniform with a firearm than a person without a uniform having concealed and making people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but how much are you budgeting for the uniforms? How much are you thinking about budgeting? You know, the pennies turn into pounds.
Well, again, Senator, it's a difference between recognizing them for who they are as in uniform. It's the same question you would ask a police officer. How much are you getting budgeted for being a police officer? It's 15 men and women that are law enforcement officers that have firearms and that are putting their lives in danger as they serve the prosecutors preparing for trial. I'm just kind of, I don't have that answer for you, Senator. I will try to obtain it once I get it.
Yeah,
it's a work in progress.
Just find it and turn it over before we actually get to your budget.
Yes, Senator.
And then, welcome back to the weeds. Are you familiar with a cartoon character called Eric the Eagle?
I'm not sure about a cartoon character. I'm acquainted that our mascot at the office is Eric the Eagle.
Have you purchased uniforms for Eric the Eagle?
You're talking about the mascot costume?
Yes.
Yes.
How many?
There's 6.
6 uniforms?
Small, medium, and large.
Okay. How much did those cost?
About for all 6, about 17,000.
How much?
17,000. Part of it came from, half of it comes from child support.
Okay, $17,000 for animal costumes?
Senator, this is a program I had when I was the Attorney General 16 years ago.
We remember.
And this is a mascot that's used to relate the child support function where you've got fighting custodial and non-custodial parents over children to ease the anxiety that occurs in that type of environment, and as part of the Access and Visitation federal program that requires the Attorney General's office to try to reduce the stress by having non-custodial parents being involved in their children's lives. That is the essence and the origins of Eric the Eagle, which is a eagle, again, mascot for the Attorney General of Guam's office. He's not a Nazi, he's not part of the eagle's nest that you're referring to, and he's a mascot for the kids of an American patriotic symbol.
Well, okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I can just say that, you know, if I was a kid in that situation and some big 6-foot eagle came walking at me, that'd scare the bejesus out of me.
Well, we got the one for the 4 to 5 foot. It's called the small Eric the Eagle's costume. That's part of the 6. Small, medium, and large.
Who
Senator.
wears those uniforms?
I'm sorry?
Who wears them? Do you task somebody in the office?
We
Hey, go put on
we
the...
have volunteers in our office that love to wear it because the kids love the costume. They love the eagle. Guam Visitors Bureau, I think, has those 2
Okay, enough.
costumes. You know, Senator, this is you're getting into the area, the child support function, the children. It was for the kids. It's a mascot. It's in order to reduce the anxiety that comes from child support proceedings.
Okay, fair enough. But it was $17,000 spent on costume characters. The other thing I wanted to, not too many more here. Oh, and going back on the frugality thing, I think the whole island probably is aware of the fact that you have put up signs, and you're on the Jumbotron, for want of a better word, in which you put faces of individuals that, who have been convicted. Did those cost, does that cost money to do that?
Oh, of course it costs money,
How
Senator.
much? How much?
I believe our costs were about, a moment, please.
No way. This is your buddy.
Senator, you know, I'm in the ballpark, but it's about $1,600 a billboard.
Okay.
Better than $100,000 for a prosecutor. These are deterrent type of images. It's a communication type of effort that our office is using. That is a rotating billboard. It will have a different image of a different criminal or some other messaging that our office chooses to put on it.
How much money? How much does it cost?
Well, if you're talking about taxpayer money, it's about $1,600 a billboard. And
Okay.
the images depend upon...
What about the Jumbotron? The media vision, the tri-vision down there?
Where's the tri-vision? $800 a month, Senator.
Okay.
And if I may, and I'll have this introduced into the legislative record,
Please.
this is the Oakland, California. How much clearer do we have to make it? A billboard by their law enforcement, looks like a police department or a district attorney, from County Attorney Andrew Thomas in California. Drive drunk, see your mugshot here.
Okay.
From, I believe this is Colorado, Wall of Shame. All effective methods that other law enforcement states are using in order to fight crime and to shame and to embarrass criminals from getting their faces put up on those billboards. Unlike the medias who put mugshots in daily in all our newspapers, those are innocent people that are being run through the newspapers or the social medias of guys in their orange jumpsuits that are innocent until proven guilty. That is not the policy of the AG's office. Our policy is we convict, you're now eligible to be put up on that billboard. And I make no bones about it. We are going to continue doing this, and whether it's a convict or whether it's Love Your Kids Month that's coming up in August, we're going to use those billboards as a messaging technique. The Attorney General needs to communicate with the public because the criminals are part of that public, their family members, their friends, and that is an effective way to reduce crime and protect us in this community. And I will continue doing it, and I will make no apologies about it.
Okay, fair enough. It looks like you were anticipating that question since you came loaded.
It's on my Facebook, by the way.
And there's,
So go to my Facebook,
so it
Douglas
looks like
Moylan.
Mr. Chair, it looks like there are 4 documents to come into the record.
3.
3?
3.
Okay. By the way, for those pictures you put up, did you consult with the victims or the victims' families before you put them up?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and
I spoke personally with the brother that was shot by Mr. Tapata and died. The murder suspect, or the murder convict, was Mr. Tabata. I spoke with not only the person that was shot and killed's brother, I spoke with the woman that was beat up by him.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I got their consent, and they specifically encouraged our office to continue fighting the criminals and putting them in jail and making them suffer. That is how you stop crime. You don't hold their hands and you don't hide their photos. They are in jail for a reason, and let's make no bones about it. The Attorney General's office is doing things that you wouldn't do yourself, arguably, sir. We're putting people in jail. That has a consequence, and we don't want to be putting people in jail, and that type of deterrence prevents the criminals from doing the crime so that we don't have to pay for lawyers, ask you for money, or burden our system of government. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, I appreciate the frugality, but we're apparently, many people perceive those as campaign signs, let's be honest.
Senator, this is not a campaign season. I just finished 6 months ago.
I'm just telling you.
I take offense to that.
I'm just telling you. You should be conscious of that.
You are accusing me of using government money for a campaign.
No, I said many.
Nowhere on those signs does it say Douglas Moylan, candidate Douglas Moylan. I'm not even sure if I'm going to run for this position in 4 years, 3.5 years. So to accuse me of using taxpayer money, a corrupt official type incident, to put up signs to protect our people, I am offended, and I take exception to that, sir.
Yeah, you seem a little sensitive on that issue.
I am sensitive because you're accusing me of wrongdoing the Attorney General of using taxpayer money in order to protect our crime victims out there. That's why I'm offended.
Okay, I noticed that in your budget request you didn't ask for any overtime, is that correct?
We did not.
Have you ever paid overtime at your office?
In the last 6 months, I'm not aware that we paid any overtime. I'm sorry. Okay. Excuse me, I stand corrected.
We have paid some for our investigators.
What's that?
We have paid some overtime.
Okay. Are you still paying investigators, for example, who work on weekends? For
No,
the magistrates?
we have stopped that.
I'm sorry?
Only if it's overtime.
I'm sorry?
Only if it's overtime.
Right, okay.
Just because it's a weekend doesn't make it overtime.
Okay, so you do expend overtime for weekend work?
That's not what I said.
Okay, can you repeat?
So the question, as I understood it, was, are you paying them overtime for weekend? And the answer is we pay overtime when it's incurred. But just because it's a weekend doesn't make it overtime. The assumption there is they work 40 during the week. But we try to change it so that we change their schedule so that way they're not working over 40 just because they work weekend.
Okay, well, okay, so if you work over 40 hours, you're going to get overtime?
Absolutely. If they're not getting it, let me know.
Okay, so on April 19th of 2023, a memorandum was sent from the Attorney General to the acting chief prosecutor. Hafaday, I'm rescinding the previous memorandum dated January 27th, 2023, which allowed for overtime to investigators during the weekend magistrate. We have hired personnel to perform this function. In addition, the investigators should manage their time and flex those hours. So prior to April 19th, you were paying overtime, sounds like, to the investigators.
I couldn't hear that. Say again?
Yeah, it sounds like at least prior to April 19th, before the Attorney General rescinded the policy.
I created the policy, sir.
Okay,
I created the policy, and I rescinded it because my people can work the full 40 hours that week and pick up Saturday. I had investigators that wanted to get off early, and I allowed them to get off early, just come in on Saturday and do that time, because that's the magistrate time you're talking about. About 4 hours of our office is needed for that. So yes, I'm the one that implemented it, and then I decided to save money and just shift the time around.
What do you mean? What do you mean by shift the time around?
Shift the time around so that for the, as Mr. Gumatauta mentioned, for the work week, a total of 40 hours would have to be worked. If you want to get off early on a Saturday or on a Wednesday or Thursday or something, you just shift it off to work coming in on Saturday.
Well,
That's
sir,
the idea. Flex time.
I sent a FOIA request to your office asking whether or not there were any written agreements between your office and any of the employees for compensatory time or flex time. The answer was, according to Mr. Guthrie, was no. The personnel rules require those sorts of things to be in writing. It appears that you are asking people to work overtime.
No, I'm
not paying them.
No,
and
sir.
then allowing them something called flex time or overtime in violation of the law. Do you disagree
There's
with
no
that?
violation of the law. I disagree with how you're characterizing it. I take offense to the way you're characterizing it.
I know
Mr.
you're offended a
Gumatau-Tau-
lot.
Well, I'm sorry?
You're offended a lot, sir.
Well, you're making a lot of offensive statements, sir, because you apparently are making statements without the knowledge of what's going on.
Well, educate me. Are you paying?
We are.
Have you paid overtime, and have you required individuals not to or to work and not compensated them with cash?
First of all,
not flex time.
You were already advised, yes, we have paid overtime. You were informed also that we are paying people for the time that they're spending over 40 hours. So unless you have a specific instance where somebody worked over 40 hours and wasn't paid, you need to tell us, because I'm not aware of anything in that regard.
Well, I have no intention of outing these people because they're afraid that you will fire them.
Well, why would I fire them if they're entitled to their money?
You've had a history of it.
Senator, I'm curious on how you're making blind allegations, but if anybody in my office, and this is a public forum, if anybody is owed any money, I of all people want to pay them. And even if our office made a mistake, I will make sure they get paid. That is the law. And Mr. Gumatau-Tau has spent quite a bit of time making sure that our admin and these type of issues are resolved. So again, unless you can give me something specific, even after the hearing, just talk to Mr. Gumatau-Tau,
So
and he'll take care of it.
it's your position then that, I guess I should address this to Mr. Gumatau-Tau. It's the position of the Office of the Attorney General that no overtime has been incurred or created that was compensated for with compensatory overtime. You've always paid cash. Stuff you can use at Payless.
I can only speak to the time I've been on board since January the 19th.
Fair enough.
And every time that this issue's come up, my understanding is that I've looked at it, and in every instance where there was overtime, we paid it. I made sure it got paid.
Cash.
And I went, not cash, it's paid through their check.
Well, okay, check.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, but there is, the law does allow for compensatory time, so instead of giving overtime pay, the employer's allowed to pay time and a half in compensatory time.
If
But
there's
if it's
a written agreement, and
That's not what it says. That's
Mr.
not what it
Guthrie
says.
said there wasn't any.
You're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. That's not what it says.
Mr. Guthrie's raising his hand.
Wait, let me just finish. Okay. So the spirit of what you're saying, I absolutely understand. And I want to make sure that if there are any employees that are not getting paid properly, I want to make sure they're paid. I mean, they're working. You know, we appreciate their work. They're government employees. They work for the people. They're entitled to be paid. And I don't like political games about it, you know, or whatever. But get them paid. And I'm absolutely hot to make sure that gets done. So when I heard, because I already talked to people that said, oh, I didn't get paid. So let's pull the record and look. And a couple times they were right. So I had to go back and get it straightened out. But I want to make sure they get paid. And on the compensatory, if it's not paid out, I think within a pay period, I mean, if it's not used within a pay period, it has to be paid.
Yes.
Yeah, it has to be paid.
Yes.
We're in agreement.
Yes, I know that you have a military background, and I do too, and you know that you don't screw with a man's
That's
paycheck.
right. That's right. It's not fair.
It's not
to
fair.
people,
It's
right.
theft. It
Yeah,
absolutely
I'm with
is.
you 100%.
Okay, good. Let's make sure everybody gets paid for every hour they work, and if
Right.
it's over 40, make sure that they get the cash.
Absolutely.
The fiat
Yeah,
for 1.5.
Right. A pat on the head's not enough. They're entitled
Okay.
to more. Absolutely.
Amen. I'll give
Thank
you
you,
a high
sir.
five on that.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that will make a lot of people happy. Okay. Going back to the idea of these opinions that we get from, when we request an opinion from the AG, like one of my colleagues, I too requested an opinion from the Attorney General's office. That was 2 months ago, and it's been crickets ever since. I haven't heard anything. I've called to the office, and I don't even get a return phone call. And then I was just informed by a friend. Is it true that there is a law that the OAG has to pay $10 for every day you're late in producing an opinion?
I've not seen that law, but I hope my staff informs me. As I told you, it's kind of curious because I think the last AG, I've gotten so many government officials telling me they never got an opinion out of him.
Yeah, let's talk about you, though.
But no, let's just put this in perspective, Senator. You're doing a hack job on this AG's office right now.
Thank you.
We've been here 6 months. We've done things that the former AG never even tried to do. I've got former employees of the former AG attesting to the changes that are going on. We've got a civil division lawyer over there that's being told he's got to kick it out within 30 days to me. I've got opinions on my desk right now that I'm going to be looking over, having the team get together as we lawyers. You are a lawyer, no. We want to talk about that opinion. We want to make sure that it is an opinion of the Attorney General's office that should come out because we've got a slew of other prior opinions. So, as I said before, if you have an opinion, you never called me, Senator.
I've called Graham Botha.
No, you call me. If you have an opinion that you need to get out, and it needs to get out ASAP, post-haste, you call the Attorney General. I am the one that's answerable in that office.
Why is that necessary? Why should I have to call the Attorney General?
Because I am the one that the people elected to be put in that office. I don't use excuses that somebody else is responsible for what I'm supposed to do. I've got contracts from government officials, department heads. They need to get out. BJ just called me the other day, the public auditor. He needed 2 contracts out. I got on their cases to make sure they got out. So if you're talking about customer service, this sounds like a customer service thing, you go to the top official at that office. I will get your opinion out, Senator.
Okay, well, it's not just me. I'm not here, complaining just for me. I'm just making the observation that it's not just me, and I have to assume that that is not unknown throughout the government of Guam.
Well, Senator, first of all, you don't have a time frame put on the statute on when it's going to be kicked out, an opinion. It's like telling the judges that they have to kick out their opinions, which they have done internally. I've done internally with our office to have it put on my desk within 30 days. So if you have a legal opinion request, Senator, and I say this with sincerity to you, I will look for it after this hearing.
No, I don't want special treatment, Mr. Attorney
you
General.
won't get
That is
special
not
treatment,
the
sir.
question. The question is whether or not you are efficiently producing and serving the government of Guam, which is also your responsibility. We know, it's factual. We know that you are not, at least in two instances. I would just ask you to do your best. Get the opinions out.
Senator, thank you. Duly noted.
Thank you.
And please help us with our appropriations request, because we need to get lawyers.
Well, we certainly...
And I'm sorry, sir, I will hire a prosecutor to prosecute these criminals over kicking out your legal opinion.
How many...
That is my priority. I'm sorry, and I will say that
how many,
to you.
well, you just brought that up again. How many lawyers are in line to get hired by you?
We have 11 that we want in prosecution. I've got maybe 5 or 6.
So do you have commitments from any of them 11?
I'm sorry?
Do you have commitments from any of the 11?
No, these are the existing prosecutors that are working the prosecution. I'm saying that we've got 5 or 6 that are online in the States wanting to come in. I've got maybe 2 or 3 on Guam that we're speaking with confidentially that might come over to our office. That's the type of negotiations that I need to do to bring in attorneys. And legal opinions are not a priority over a trial, a criminal trial, where somebody's asserted speedy trial and we need to put them in jail and keep them there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Brown, do you have any comments or questions for the panel?
I just have to beat Senator Fisher to the next AG hearing. I have to get here before him. Well, at least one thing I learned, AG Douglas, this morning is not to get married because I can't afford to get divorced. I take that. I think we just had to add a little levity here. I know there's a lot of questions that are being answered, and I certainly appreciate you providing your position, and certainly there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you have your agenda as to why you ran for office, and the people elected you, as the case of everyone here on this side of the aisle. So I certainly appreciate your candor and, standing your ground. I think you need to do that as we do, and what our issues of concerns and what our convictions are. So I do appreciate your response to all of our questions this morning. I did want to ask and see with regards to, I know a lot of our colleagues have already asked the specifics of the budget. I don't have too many questions with that, but in terms of, since we do have the opportunity, your current relations with our public auditor's office, because I've certainly found in all these years, and it's been now 34 years in the government of Guam, and I think you're challenged because there's not been consistent enforcement with regards, particularly on the government side, and even what you're seeing in the criminal side here on Guam. And I just want to start off by asking you, certainly in your previous term as Attorney General and coming back now, I understand you had a larger staff, as we did in Gov Guam throughout the government of Guam, some of these critical areas. I mean, DPW was 1,000 strong once upon a time. And we're seeing in these areas that we have less people, government's costing more, but yet the service, and delivery that our people expect is maybe not to the standard even we used to have when government was a lot simpler. How do you compare it coming back now in terms of the amount of cases that you're having to deal with? I know we understand the whole issue of you're trying to get additional attorneys hired, but from your perspective, what do you see as the volume? Do you see more crime in comparison?
There's definitely
and if
more.
so, what areas do you see?
There's definitely more crime, Senator. The violent crimes have gone up. The non-violent crimes, non-government corruption type crimes have gone up. The people's perception of lawlessness out there has gone up. Hence, this election, in my humble opinion, was about the public saying that they wanted to be safe in the community. So the emphasis that I see in the next 4 years, 3.5 years of my term, will always be prosecution, because that was the last litmus test that we took as a community. When I hear Department of Corrections telling us that the AG's office is sending more criminals into their lockups, and the judges are seeing that and working with everybody in law enforcement to put the violent criminals and the non-violent criminals behind bars pending their trials, that's a reassurance to us that something's changing. And it's changing in a good way, because the normal thing is you make the prison larger if that's the case. But the ultimate product is keeping us safe, both on a personal level, but also all your property, the respect for the law, those sorts of things. And it gets amplified when you put things like billboards up, you show the success rate of the office of my prosecutors that are taking, and show what our juries and judges are doing. Those jurors that sit and listen to the evidence and then decide that this person is guilty or not guilty, the time they're putting into it. So what is different? The focus upon people feeling on a fundamental level that our government did not keep them safe, and watching our programs and everything we're trying to do come to either a good conclusion or we need to modify and change our behaviors. But as I said in the beginning, attorneys, unlike any other department in this government, are the most expensive proposition, especially when you have one department who primarily relies upon the attorneys. Hence, the Attorney General. Some jurisdictions I hear you don't even have to be an attorney to be the head Attorney General in their jurisdiction. But Guam is, like with most jurisdictions, requires an attorney to be heading this office, this law firm, this public law firm that I'm in charge of right now. So that's what's different, but what's unlike 20 years ago was that we don't have enough lawyers in Guam to serve the people of Guam, whether we're talking about the Citizens for Protection or the government officials, or like Senators Taitagui and Senator Fisher that talk about legal opinions. I'm trying to do more with what we have. I'm using the skills I have of a 30-year lawyer in order to serve and do all the duties that I'm trying to do in that office.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think most of us will agree that that was an ongoing issue of our community, is seeing these individuals that have committed crimes, and yet they were back out and they were, arrested again, and they even had their previous cases, they hadn't even been heard yet. So I'm very supportive of that. I think most of our people are in seeing that issue being addressed. With regards to your relationship with the public auditor, and one of the things I've certainly found is, yes, a lot of time and effort is being invested in the work of the public auditor's office, but then once those reports came out, pretty much nothing happened. And one of the things we did authorize in the budget bill last year, which was extracted from one of the bills that I had introduced, was to have an assistant attorney general hired and paid for by the public auditor's office, specifically to look at those cases. And you mentioned you're already doing ongoing work with the public auditor. Because one of the things I'm finding, particularly in government, I used to think that these activities that we would look at that were not legal, was the exception to the rule. But I'm seeing over time, and it's unfortunate, I'm feeling a little jaded, but it's almost standard. And is it because there's been a lack of awareness or a lack of prosecution on cases that government officials, and I recognize everyone hired in the government of Guam is a government official, where there's not been any action taken in the past? Because to me, it's pretty standard these days. I mean, the rule is to get away with it. It's not to be held responsible to our respective positions. It's to do whatever you can and allow the short timeline that we have, even these now 90 days, the way things have been set up is, you just run the clock and get away with the crime.
Senator, so for purposes of your question, are we talking about the AG's coordination with the public auditor?
Yes,
okay.
yes. I mean, because when we see the reports where the public auditors come up where they see issues that are, criminal in nature, the discrepancies in terms of their financial audits that they're doing. I mean, they do the reports, the report gets filed, we all see it, and then that's about in the past, in most cases, that's pretty much been the extent of what's happened in our government. There's been no follow-through on the other end, and as, understanding our public auditor, B.J. Cruz, of course, he says, I'm not the prosecutor. I understand. He has his role, his office has his role, and that's why I'm asking him with regards to your relationship, so that we have some sense of comfort that when all this time and effort's being investigated to do these audits, and if they find there's, illegal activity occurring, that there's going to be some consequence. And I agree with you. I'm not all for the hand-holding. I think there's areas where that can be looked at, but in other areas where we see these extreme abuse of public resources, sometimes in the millions of dollars, not a few dollars here and there, in the millions of dollars, and there's no consequence to it. So I wanted to hear from your office, how are you addressing or responding to that in terms of your relationship on following up on those audits and addressing appropriate action, whatever it may be?
Thank you. Since in my position as a AG-elect, I believe it was in December, I had meetings with B.J. Cruz. Once I took office, I had meetings with the public auditor. Gloria Rudolph and the team of investigators that she is now heading has had meetings with the public auditor. Unlike, from what I understand, the last AG's office did with the terms of the output, but also preparing those reports and getting to that actual accounting report. White-collar government corruption is based upon white-collar crime, which is based upon accounting. That's why the FBI, in their original, the origins of the FBI were accountant lawyers who followed the money. From the legislature, I fully respect that when there's government corruption going on, it wastes the money that the legislature appropriates, but the legislature, like BJ, can only go so far, like the public auditor can only go so far. The trust of prosecution and taking individuals before our juries and our court system relies upon the Attorney General's office. We created, and I recreated, the original Government Corruption Division and have now staffed it with at least one lawyer, and I'm looking for more, and especially with the civil background, because these are not your normal prosecutors that look at violent crimes. These are the people that have to sit down like Tom Paulino, a CPA, looking at the paper trail on how that money was appropriated, how it was spent, who received it, whether people benefited personally from it, whether they created such a condition that the government lost so much money that it rose to a level of criminal prosecution because they're being paid to protect us. And I reference the certifying officers that I often hear coming out of the legislature by senators saying that the certifying officers are responsible. Well, the people who are responsible for taking those certifying officers and analyzing and taking them before a grand jury is the Attorney General's office. I am 100% behind you, Senator Brown. I know that you have a long history of making sure that our government officials follow the law and that everybody is held accountable. And I have Gloria Rudolph now that is fully dedicated towards receiving all complaints on government corruption. I've got Heather Zona and Grant Olan that are providing the support that Gloria Rudolph needs in her division in the office. I've got two fully assigned investigators that are working closely not only with the public auditor's office, but with every other resource in our government in order to detect and to analyze whether or not a corrupt activity occurred. We've got the civil side, and then you've got the criminal side. The criminal side is a fast result that you get before our juries, and it's a cleansing effect. The fact that my team was able to now start bringing to conclusion our office's analysis and to a grand jury the information is sending the deterrent effect needed for our community. That certifying officers know, do not authorize or sign that document, or you may be brought before a grand jury or a jury because you're not following the law. They're paid a certain amount of money, and a good amount of money, to be a certifying officer in this government. And you are not supposed to sign off on a document just because somebody above you told you to sign off on it. That is where we're coming from, Senator. I am taking the money that you're giving us, and we're going to continue to fund the Government Corruption Division. We're trying to be as fair and just as possible, but as I said before, when taxpayer money ends up in somebody's pocket or somebody else's pocket because of a government official, or the injury is to the extent that somebody in our community has been hurt because they didn't do their jobs, it becomes part of a very, we start analyzing that case to green light it to go before a grand jury more so. BJ Cruz has a tremendous amount of experience as a judge, a justice, a senator, a speaker, and every time that he speaks with us, we listen very carefully to BJ. So we're working hand in hand with him like I did with Doris Brooks 16 years ago. And we're hoping to start setting a tone in our community so we don't have to take people before a grand jury, so that BJ starts issuing reports saying that this person complied or there was an honest mistake. We don't want to go after honest mistakes in our Government Corruption Division. We want to prevent it, and thank you for yours and the other senators' support of our office and our about 150, 200 people here.
I'm sure you have people calling in if they know or are aware of, improper activities happening, but is there a number that people can call in? Because they're not necessarily going to know who to talk to. They may not know, who on your staff. I mean, is there something the general public can be aware of, so that if they were aware, or if I worked in Gov Guam and I had an issue of concern of misuse of government resources or whatever, who do I call, or what number would I call?
We have that on our website, Senator, and I am receiving personally many complaints of government corruption. They feel comfortable, contacting me directly, and then I respond as well as send it off to the proper individuals in our office, which is the Government Corruption Division, or it could be a consumer complaint, or it could. I do a lot of the filtering myself, but I do receive the government corruption types of complaints.
I know it was briefly touched on with unclassified. I know some of the requests that you're making that it was included in your budget bill probably is going to be discussed in separate legislation versus the budget, because I know you touched on a number of issues here that you wanted or recommended changes to the law affecting your office. With regards to unclassified, and I understand your point also, being an elected official, of wanting to have your unclassified staff, but I'm also seeing, AG, in the last few budgets, considerable amount of unclassified employees hired in Government of Guam line agencies. And I understand, at least under the law, my last recollection is that these positions were to be temporary. They're between 1 year in nature. And then if you were to fill that position, you had to meet the minimum requirements of holding that position. And we're seeing some of these unclassified positions that have extended over years. And in some areas, substantial numbers of increase. I mean, like 1920 in an agency, normally you had a director, a deputy, maybe a board secretary if you had a board. And that used to be the standard. But, I understand the need for unclassified, but I certainly am a little concerned about the abuse of that practice these days. So I'm just referencing that to be something to be mindful. You mentioned that you're moving to a new location, that procurement has been completed. Are you able to let us know where your new location is going to be for your new office?
Thank you, Senator. It's going to be at the Bank of Hawaii building, the third and the fourth floors, part of the fourth and the third floor. So it'll be
just
right next to the legislature.
down the road, we get to say hi.
Yes, Senator. We will welcome all senators.
Nearby. Just next door, Bank of Hawaii. Bank of Hawaii, just next door.
Right here. Yes. IPE is the landlord of both the ITC and the Bank of Hawaii.
Also, with regards to drug testing, have you done drug testing of your designated staff at the Attorney General's office? I know you have investigators there. Have you done that?
We have done several.
Okay.
Over the past 6 months, there has been random drug testing that's been done not only for investigative unit, but for also other individuals in the office. It's part of the commitment that they sign when all employees are brought on.
Well, I appreciate that feedback because we're finding, in some cases in our government agencies, that's not been the standard. I know there's a previous executive order or previous administration that required that on a regular basis for designated test positions. So I appreciate hearing that. You have a tremendous challenge. I mean, I know there's a lot of different perspectives we may have, and I understand the growing needs of your office with the challenges that you're faced with. And we may not always agree collectively, but I think we recognize we want to have a safe community. We want to ensure that our people and our citizens are following the law and doing what they need to do collectively to contribute to the community. So I thank you. I know you've had a lot of response to make to all our colleagues this morning, but we certainly thank you for you and your staff being present to respond to our questions concerning your budget. Thank you very
Senator
much.
Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. And before I close, and my question, the Oversight Chair has a few more questions to ask you. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the second opportunity. Attorney General Moylan, do all the attorneys in your office get paid the same? I'm sorry, yeah. Yes, I guess.
My understanding is we have 4 different pay scales. We have 4 different pay scales depending upon the number of years, and they have different steps within them. So no, not all the attorneys are...
Is that consistent with the attorney pay plan under 4GCA?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So your attorneys are being paid in accordance with the attorney pay plan, which is consistent with how public defenders are paid, and the lawyers over at the court are paid, and the lawyers if they are in-house at any other agency?
That's my understanding.
All right. And then what about the prosecutors? Do they get that 15% differential that we put into the budget?
Yes, I call it the pay incentive, and that came from the last legislature and the last Attorney General's...
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. In fact, that was the language I think they suggested. We were concerned that we need prosecutors and we need to retain them, and so we were trying to use a method similar to what's being used to retain nurses at the hospital and different law enforcement officers as well. But so they're receiving that pay.
Yes, they are.
All right. And if I could go back to the 6% one more time, to be honest with you, this was never brought to my attention that this was only applicable to attorneys. I must have read it wrong during our proceeding. It's not an amendment that I introduced, but it's been in place since October last year, and even the prior Attorney General never brought this to my attention, that it was only being applied to attorneys and not to all the non-law enforcement personnel at the AG's office. That was, I thought, the intent. And I would have put in a bill to fix that if I understood that that was not being implemented. No one brought that to my attention. Is this been paid to the attorneys in your office, this 6%?
Yes.
Okay. Is it lawful for us to do an amendment to this, and instead of saying applicable to attorneys, that we say applicable to non-law enforcement personnel, which is exactly what we said under the public defenders, same provision. We said applicable to non-law enforcement personnel. If we did that, would that also include the attorneys? Yes? Tom?
Yes, it would.
I would probably want to talk to you, Madam Speaker, about that, because
all right.
the prosecutors and the investigators are considered law enforcement under the statute. So
Okay.
if we put that type, we may come into play with the definition.
All right. Well, I want to clarify because I'm curious whether the attorneys at the public defenders are getting paid this 6%. It was my understanding they were not, but are they? Well, I'll clarify that with them. The attorneys are not law.
Excuse me, if you're going to speak, please come forward, Mark. Gunnell, come forward and speak on the mic, okay? Thank you, Mr. Pito. I think he's been sworn. You've been sworn in, right, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, Mark Pito, Personnel Specialist 4. My understanding is law enforcement is referencing the law enforcement pay plan, which police department and our investigators are on. And so that, my understanding is that's the reference of non-law enforcement. So that includes staff and PD staff and attorneys at PD.
Okay. Well, I'll clarify that with the public defender, and thank you. And do you think, and so my other question would be, and you don't have to answer this right now, but I would like to know whether we could do that retroactively.
Okay.
It was supposed to be a benefit for the employees, the regular employees. It was also supposed to be that when the 22% was passed by the governor, we actually asked this of the public defenders, what about that 6% you already received? And they said that would be part of the 22. So it wouldn't be 6 plus 22, it would be 22 total. That's what they told us verbally. I don't know what your interpretation of the actual language would be, but I think that's the intent, right? Is that all the employees at the Attorney General's office were supposed to be treated like the non-attorney and non-law enforcement personnel at the public defender's office and receive the 22%. Yes. Okay, so we'll talk about that one. The AG opinions, I agree with you. I asked several opinions of the prior Attorney General, did not receive a response to all of them, despite follow-up. And so you know that I sent those all to you again in January, and I appreciate your response on some are pending. And so thank you for that. I know we passed a law not too long ago where AG opinions, we wanted them all to be public, and they were supposed to mandate is that they're sent to the legislature, no matter who you're sending an opinion to, that there's a copy sent to the legislature and a copy sent to the compiler. And I believe you've been complying with that. It's because I've seen the Attorney General opinions for other entities. All right, and then I noted that, so you've compacted attorneys, like one attorney to serve 3 agencies that used to be one attorney to serve 1. But we've seen in other agencies, for example, GMH, used to be serviced by the Attorney General's office. It's now hired 2 lawyers to do the work that used to be done in the Attorney General's office. Department of Revenue and Taxation has hired 3 lawyers to do the work that used to be done in the Attorney General's office, together with all the other work that the Attorney General was doing. And at the time, I remember following up, and the agencies seemed very satisfied with the work that they were getting at that time out of the Attorney General's office. So I was very surprised when these agencies went off and hired lawyers on their own, especially multiple lawyers.
Yes.
So I understand the issue that you're having with trying to hire lawyers if they are working for one agency compared to having to handle perhaps many issues in your office.
Yes.
And the pay scales probably same, but very much different work.
Unless they do contract, and we've seen the authorities do that. Like GMH has that ability to offer contract. I'm not sure if that's what they're doing there now, but they can outbid us. And again, that's what the bidding war is going on with lawyers on Guam. Whoever has the bigger, better package for the lawyers, they're moving. Like the accountants with BJ Cruz, I think he was mentioning. So.
Oh yes. Okay.
That's why I took Mr. Botha came from CCU, but the negotiations that go on, it's a lawyer's market right now.
All right. Well, and then on the provisions that you've asked to be included in the budget, I have no issue with any of them, except I told the chair this one about outside employment regulated. I'm thinking about it. I just saw this the other day, but I'm thinking maybe this should be treated separately so we can have a full discussion on it, because it says that what the request is that attorneys inside the Department of Law or the Attorney General's office, they can get this exemption to engage in the practice of law outside.
Right.
But attorneys in the classified or unclassified in any other government agency or autonomous agency or semi-autonomous or branch cannot do that. So I just want to know the rationale why they can't and why it's okay for the Department of Law to do that. But I think my bigger concern is it's that if you have a prosecutor, let's say, for example, I think a prosecutor in another case with a civilian,
Yeah.
and that prosecutor is acting as a layperson at that time, but I don't know, I would think that might cause some fear of like unfairness in the prosecution side. If that same person who they were adversarial with in a, regular legal matter, then comes up before the prosecutor's office.
That would normally be, well, first of all, there would probably be a walled-off type of conflict, which, as you know, Madam Speaker, occurs in law firms. But again, this is not a novel idea. We did this 16 years ago. I don't know when they changed the law, changed it, but the federal government allows for it. The Attorney General's office, this was the rule before in the AG's office, at a time when they had enough lawyers. But now that we don't have enough lawyers to make it attractive to, especially the older ones.
Oh,
but I mean.
Thank you. And then the other part was Attorney Gugumatauto said this should be limited to non-paying
right, that was
clients.
The federal model that Frank had pulled out. That is what the federal government says for pro bono type situations.
All right, if I could get a copy of that, maybe, I appreciate it. Or the citation, yeah, so we could look it up. And then if you say there is, like, there are rules in your office as to how you would prevent such a conflict, if you could just send those rules to us, that would help also. All right, and again, thank you to all of you for your work and for your presentation today.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think in reference, General Moylan, in reference to what our colleague brought up in reference to the fee that's charged to the Attorney General for not giving an opinion, you'll find it on 5 Guam Code 5 GCA, Section 30107, opinions. And when you look it up and you see the name St. Augustine, it wasn't me, that was my father, okay? So don't reference me. It was before, I think, even you yourself, General, you weren't born, but it's in 88, not that old. It does reference that within 7 days. And then back in 88, there wasn't that many opinions, and that's probably why they said, get it out.
Yeah.
Now it's a different world. Take a look at it, and then let's make the adjustment.
We're going to look at it, Senator.
Because that's $100 for every day.
Understood.
And we'll take it out of your budget.
I believe that 7 days after issuance of an opinion, it has to go to the compiler or the legislature.
Also.
That's the deadline.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know my assistant is kicking out all those pursuant to what this Madam Speaker is indicating.
And General Moylan, I like the posters.
Thank you.
I like the idea. But I like to see one out there like that says this, wall of shame.
Yeah.
Put them out. Not just one. I understand the guy that committed murder, but put it out.
I agree with you,
Because I'll tell you what, the first thing everybody's going to think about is that I can't get caught DWI because I'm going to be on the board.
Yeah.
And just do what you need to do.
Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. Actually, I kind of agree with what you're saying.
If you do the crime, you do the time, and your picture's on the board. Have a nice day.
Right.
And we move on. On another issue, we'll work it because number one, Tom, when you said 600,000, I text my OFB folks, you got 3.5 by the end of the year. 3.5 million. Do the numbers. Work it. If you hire all the attorneys to fill those positions, you're only going to spend about $1 million. You have enough money to pay your merit and pay your 22%. Okay, so let's work the numbers. Because I want to support your budget, but I'm not going to just give you, and then I have to look at the other agencies. And the rest of my colleagues are going to say, okay, which one is better? Fight crime, not a problem. That's easy. I'm a former police officer. But you can only spend so much. Okay? And you can only get so much money, and then you're going to fight crime, but another agency's not going to be working, and you'll be like, it ain't going to work. The Governor of Guam has got to be able to still function. Then we make it work. Other than that, there's no one else to testify on your budget. That being said, I want to thank everyone for attending this hearing and for providing feedback and suggestion. It's been an exciting hearing. The Office of the Attorney General's Office, Budget hearing is now adjourned. It is now 12:16. Please be safe and take care.